I'm going to call to order the meeting of the Brawley City Council and successor agency to Brawley Community Redevelopment Agency. This is our regular meeting agenda for June 1st, 2021 at 6 p.m. here in City Council Chambers at 383 Main Street in Brawley, California. Let's have the roll call.
Mayor Hamby,
Here.
Mayor Pro Tem Couchman,
Here.
Councilmember Nava,
Here.
Councilmember Castro,
Here.
Councilmember Ward.
Here. I like the dramatic pause.
Thank you, Alma. Perfect. All right, we're going to have our invocation. I'd like to invite Police Chief Jimmy Durant to come and lead us in prayer this evening.
First of all, I'd like to thank you for the opportunity to give the invocation this evening. It's really an honor, so thank you. Let us pray. Heavenly Father, we thank you for the many blessings that you have given us in our city and for those who are willing to serve others. I pray that you continue to bless us and continue to give wisdom to our city council, our mayor, and our city manager, and other community leaders as they bear the weight of this city on their shoulders. Grant them the ability and courage to know and do what is right, good, and true. May they always be guided by you when faced with hard decisions. I ask for your grace tonight during this council meeting, that it may be fruitful and in the best interest of our citizens. In Jesus' name, amen.
Amen.
Thank you, Chief. Mayor Pro Tem Couchman, will you lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance?
Ready, begin. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. All right, first on the agenda, item 1, approval of the agenda.
So moved.
Second the motion.
It's been moved and seconded. All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed or abstentions? Item 2, public appearances and comments, not to exceed 4 minutes. This is the time for the public to address the council on any item not appearing on the agenda that is within the subject matter jurisdiction of the city council. I know we have some here to comment about the cell tower, and if you want to hold those comments until item 6, regular business, we do have a specific agenda item for that discussion. If anyone else has a public comment, now is your time.
Hi, thank you very much. Julie Reeves, and I have to get to a baseball game, so I can't stay for all the way to the agenda, but I have something else I want to discuss also, and that's the trash. And I think I emailed you guys about the weeds and the trash. And can you not find those businesses if they don't clean it up? Because it's very trashy, and I'm speaking specifically of the 7-Eleven on Western and Main. Both the alley and the weeds are horrible. I mean, disgustingly horrible. And it's really a blight on our town. And it's not just there, it's all around, and it looks terrible. So I just thought that might be a way to make money, since I know this tower is a way to make money. This might be another way to make money. And I would hope with the tower that you would be able to find another location in which to put it. If you could search more diligently in that regards, I would appreciate it. I'm heading over to a game right where that tower is going to be. And I got 5 boys playing, so I'm there a lot. And I just think it's not a very good location. So if you guys could reconsider that, I'd appreciate it very much.
Thank
Okay.
you.
Thank
you
for your
comments.
Thank you.
Any other public comment? Okay. Move on to item 3, consent agenda. Items are approved by one motion. Council members or members of the public may request consent items be considered separately at a time determined by the mayor. Do I have a motion to approve the consent agenda as written?
Mr. Mayor, I'll make a motion to approve the consent agenda as written.
Okay.
I'll second.
Been moved and seconded. All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed or abstentions? Okay, item 4. This would be a fiscal year 21-22 proposed citywide budget workshop. We're going to review, discuss, and provide additional direction on the proposed fiscal year 2021-2022 citywide budget. This is presented by our Finance Director, Carla Romero. Backup is on pages 66 through 194.
Thank you, Mayor, members of the City Council. It's so nice to see you all up here. Have to get used to now relocating your faces as I'm speaking and make sure I look at all of you.
My name's Sam Couchman.
Yeah, I agree.
So I think we're on the wrong slide there.
No, brother.
I think I can just fast forward just a little bit and we'll come back to those slides. Sorry. I think that was my fault. I'm gonna take that one.
Carla, if you could come see me after the meeting, please.
And he's joking because it's the first time he's at the big kids table here, huh?
Yeah, back up with the adults, yeah.
He's back up with the adults.
Thank you. Okay, so good evening again. Today is our third budget study session for the next fiscal year 2021 budget. We want to remind the public that we do have a comprehensive landing page on our website that does include all of the budget study session materials for the previous two study sessions and this one as well. All of the presentations are also on that link, and so are the links to the City Council presentations, all on one page. So if anyone is interested, they can go to one page and find all the resources regarding next year's proposed budget. The staff reports do include a brief summary, but what we'll do today is expand a little bit more on what those changes have been since the first two study sessions. We included a lot of pictures today from our fire department throughout the presentation. They were gracious enough to give me those, and so just wanted to give them a nod and a thank you for all of their public service and protection of property and lives to our community. And as always, our city manager and all the directors and managers are here to answer any questions that you might have. And I'm going to ask if we can keep the video kind of on the presentation because there's a lot of numbers and kind of details that go along, and I think it's great for the public so that they can be able to see those as well. So again, the materials presented to you tonight are comprehensive. They're both study sessions 1 and 2. What we did was we gave it to you in the same format, but if you look at your actual materials, on the far right column, if you see a 0, that means there was no change between study session 1 and 2 or this study session. But if there is a change in that number, that means that it has been adjusted in some way or another. And so we'll be talking about just specifically those adjustments tonight. I'm not going to reiterate everything that was said in both study sessions. We've done that. So again, just focused on the changes. So we'll do the general fund first, and then we'll do all of the other funds. For the revenue, we have 2 different types of adjustments. We have some library services grants that were adjusted, and then also some administrative allocations that we had discussed that needed to be finalized as a budget process. The salary and benefits were adjusted. Those were adjusted as well. So we have a minor increase in our revenues of $91,063. And then we also have some expense adjustments. So we incorporated the 3 bargaining labor unit negotiations that are basically finalized into the budget process, and we made some estimates on the final one. That increased our salary and benefits by $237,145. And then we also had some operating expenses that were adjusted for a total of $42,150, and these included a minor increase in our vehicle leases because, as you know, it's very hard to come by some of those. Not only are they lagging a little bit in the dissemination of getting those vehicles, but they have increased slightly. So it's about a $2,500 increase there. Then we also increased graffiti abatement supplies by $3,000, and we had a minor increase overall of $1,600 in travel, training, and membership contributions comprehensively. And then the one item that was a little bit bigger was $35,000 for the recreation leagues. So that budget was inadvertently missed the last time, and so we went ahead and we added it at this point, and that is the largest of that $32,000. So again, that was $35,000. Then the next item there for contract services of $103,000 increase. We increased the professional services budget within the personnel budget, human resources, to support those operations and some ongoing services that are needed there. We also increased the IT budget. As we discussed the last time, I was a little worried about Armando there and making sure that he had enough support to get everything done that he needed to get done. So we added $28,000 to his budget. And then we also added $30,000 to non-departmental for legislative update services that were approved tonight as well for a couple of months of those services. So comprehensively, we also had to update our workers' comp / insurance allocations. We mentioned last time that we had some savings and that some of those savings would be allocated throughout the different departments because they're based on salary and benefits. And so the portion that belongs to the general fund equated to a savings of $127,226. So overall, again, we have an increase. So if you look on the far right, last time we talked about the general fund, we started off with a surplus of $188,000. And then we have the additional revenue that's noted on the left. And then we have the additional expenses. And then the new budget surplus is $24,331. So minor surplus when you're comparing it to like a $17 million budget, but we were able to get there, and I don't anticipate there being any other major changes to any of these numbers unless you would like us to add anything tonight that we haven't thought of, and we can certainly still do that before the budget is adopted on June 15th.
Good work. It's just really tight, you know?
It is.
Yeah.
Yeah. So when we take a look at here, we have the summary overall comprehensively. Our revenues, 17.3 million, expenses 17.2, almost 17.3. Again, that budget surplus, very minimal there. As a reminder, during the first study session, we talked about multiple deferred expenses. We talked about air conditioners not being replaced and certain upgrades to buildings that weren't able to be incorporated into the budget. They still remain unincorporated into the budget, and they still remain deferred. And then we also have expenses that we've identified from that American Rescue Plan monies. Also, not incorporated into the budget at this point, as mentioned in one of the staff reports. Later on, we'll talk about it, but the American Rescue Plan funding, we haven't received any of the money yet, and we haven't received all out of the firm guidance. So there's still a lot of vague guidance and a lot of questions that agencies have. So what we're proposing to do with that is bring back a budget adjustment and create a separate fund in order to house all of that revenue and all of those expenses and be able to track those through the lifetime of that particular funding. So we'll be doing that as we go forward in the budget. So if we had been able to incorporate all of those, we would have ended up with a budget deficit of about $4.5 million. And so, again, can't highlight enough how much it's great to have a minor budget surplus, but really we would have a huge deficit had we been able to fund and incorporate everything into the budget that we have identified as a need for the city. So some key points to consider just overall globally for the budget, general fund, and all of our funds is that we do have a gradual economic recovery where there's a lot of uncertainty still, and we'll continue to monitor those as we go forward. There are no changes to current fees, rates, tax structures incorporated into the budget. So the ARP funding, we've already talked about that, and we'll be recognizing that in the near future. We have incorporated funding to reopen city facilities such as the Lions Center, Parks and Recs, library, senior center. We'll be slowly bringing those on board, and I know that our city manager has been working very closely with all of the departments and managers to have those operations be open as soon as possible, but hopefully by July 1st at the latest. So we are working on those.
If I could just add something, and that reminded me, I didn't mention it during public comment, but I did receive 2 public comments from Pablo Cortez and another gentleman, and there was a request for the facility for youth boxing to be opened up. I don't know if that makes a change in any of the expenses for our budgeting process, but just to keep that in mind, please, because that will need to be open here sometime very soon. So just note of that, and that just reminded me. I'm sorry, I didn't mention it earlier.
Okay. We'll double check with Rachel and make sure that we have some funding for that. If not, we can incorporate that into the next and final budget study session.
Yeah, so the people commenting was Ralph Espinoza and Pablo Cortez, and they are in charge of the youth boxing program. So they had requested previously, and I'm bringing it up to date because they just reached out recently again. So anyway.
Certainly.
That's-
And as you know, the budget is a living, breathing document. There's going to be continuous monitoring, continuous updates, and continuous adjustments throughout the fiscal year. I am proposing to bring back quarterly updates, brief and targeted to what any changes are needed throughout the year, and also just for public information as how things are progressing with this economic recovery. The governor's budget is intended to be adopted by June 15th, and so we'll continue to monitor that. But I don't foresee any changes there incorporated into our particular city budget. We've already done those changes. So the last time, I think it was the first study session, someone asked me, and I forget who it is, I'm sorry, about what was the overall impact of pensions. We talked about pensions, and thank you, yes. And so I always like to bring back answers. I may not have the answers that same night, but I do have an answer for you tonight. For this coming fiscal year, we actually saw a decrease in these three categories. So again, our POB, our pension obligation bond, the total debt service that's incorporated into the budget is $1.1 million. The bond matures in 2032. And again, that funding is allocated based on the department's funds and payroll. So you see some minor adjustments based on the new distribution of payroll, salary, and benefits that are incorporated within the new budget. But overall, we are seeing a decrease of $417,000 there. So for next year. But then if you fast forward and you go to 2022-23, you'll see an increase of $45,379. Again, those are all tied to the debt service schedules. And then from there on out, you'll see that minor increase of about $45,000 every year. And so we can't just look at 1 year and celebrate, but we always have to look kind of ahead and see, well, should we plan for going forward? What do we know is on the horizon? We also have the payroll PERS. When you compare the ongoing biweekly payroll PERS payment compared to the budget this year, we have an increase of about $24,113. And that's partially because we are bringing back some of the staff, and we do have the one new position as well. And so that on top of just the ongoing contributions for payroll and payroll changes, so as you increase the salaries, the payroll contribution also increases. So kind of a combination of things there. And we would anticipate that to have a minor increase next year as well. The unfunded accrued liability payment, that's the big one. That's the unfunded pension liability. This year we see an increase of $213,267. And next year, CalPERS has already let us know that you should expect an increase of at least $175,880. And so, and they've actually given us projections for the next 5 years, and it's about that tune. And that's before the asset liability management cycle update that we talked about so much the last time as well. So again, on the horizon, just mentioned right now, the CalPERS ALM asset liability management cycle. We are expecting another update from CalPERS in August, with a final determination by November, and then an effective changes to agencies starting in the fiscal year 22-23. We always have reporting updates and mandates that continue to push down on us without any funding from from the state usually. We do have some fee studies that need to be updated. They're a little outdated, and so we'll be working on those during the year, figure out how those can be incorporated into the budget. Those state mandates, if most of you follow legislation, there are a ton of proposed assembly bills and Senate bills that are sitting out there just waiting to be signed and could impact the city in multiple ways, and so we'll continue to monitor those. We already talked about those deferred expenses, and we'll keep trying to find those grant opportunities to fund some of those deferred expenses, knowing that we have such a tight surplus there, and probably I'm not able to fund them unless we do have some sort of external funding available to the city. So I'll pause there before I go on to the other funds. These are just two slides. One is on revenues and one is on expenses, but wanted to take any questions on the general fund before I move on, if you have any.
Mr. Mayor, just from my memory also, this includes the general fund reserve fund.
The only portion that would go to reserves is at $24,311 at the end of the year, so
But,
no additional.
But carrying forward the balance that still exists in there
Yes.
as well. So-
Correct.
Okay.
Yes, the $1.7 million, I believe it was.
Okay.
Yes.
It also doesn't incorporate the funding for Main Street if we ever reach that point with the reserve money that we have for that. That's in
Right.
abeyance too.
Yes, no highway relinquishment.
Yeah.
Funding has been incorporated into the budget at this point.
Correct.
Yes. There are some expenses for professional services for the allocation on the traffic signals throughout Main Street from that funding source incorporated into the budget, but no support for the general fund for the operations,
Okay.
for street maintenance operations.
Okay.
That
So
is
we'll be at
correct.
like a 10% reserve?
At the end of the day, I don't know, Tyler, how much?
We were, at the last audit, we were at about 11%. Of course, as we're all aware, the policy should be 15. It is 15% per policy. We're not there. If 26, 24,000, whatever the change was, the small amount is not a lot. So about 11%, give or take, we're anticipating.
And just a reminder to everybody, that 15% was set by council. It wasn't something that was, that's standardized anywhere else. It's just
Yeah.
something that we've set. So, we've had the ability to
Yeah.
adjust that figure as we've needed to. So.
Yeah, and actually, frankly, with some of the struggles we've had over the past several years, it's actually encouraging that we're carrying
Right.
forward
I
and
agree.
keeping that
I
intact.
agree.
And now
Yeah.
we're at
I
11%,
agree.
so that's good.
Much better spot than I thought it would be,
Yeah.
so thank you.
Me too.
Right? Yeah.
Yes, we worked very hard to get there. So let's talk a little bit about those other funds. We have some minor revenue adjustments just in these three different funds. We talked a little bit last time about how the state kind of pulled the rug under me 2 days before the meeting and changed those allocations, so we've adjusted those revenues, and it is a decrease of $42,764. And then we also had disclosed last time about the grant funding that was inadvertently, kind of left out, and so we've added that into the budget as well, and that's for a CIP project. And then we had a minor reduction in the gas tax funding for capital streets projects, but no changes in the actual capital improvement projects, and so we're not going to be going over those in detail tonight. I think we heard about them all last time. But Guillermo's here to answer any questions you may have thought of since then.
Okay.
And this is a chart. These are all of the expense adjustments for all of those other funds. Again, I'm just going to highlight the major ones. The gas tax funding, we have salary and benefits paid out of there. It's the first line item. We have some insurance allocations for the workers' comp because, again, those are tied to salary and benefits. And then the administration allocation for out of there. So we see a comprehensive decrease of $56,451. And then the next line item, the Measure D funding, same type of kind of sources again, the admin insurance allocation and the transfer to the streets for CIP. So you see an increase there of $64,637. We'll skip down a few rows to the 456 Water Capacity Development Impact Fee Fund. Overall, this is where some of that CIP funding changed. Again, no changes in the projects, just some minor changes within the funding sources of the projects. So we see a decrease there of $51,915. And then the same water enterprise and the wastewater enterprise, this is where we're seeing some of our major variances. These are the water, the 501 is on page 169 of the agenda packet, and then the wastewater is on 173. Again, same things, allocated salary and benefits, insurances, admin cost, and the CIP funding. Some of the CIP funding moved from the water to the wastewater, but overall, the CIP funding only increased by $34,050. So again, no changes in any of those projects. And those are the major ones there. So I'm happy to answer any questions that you have on any of them, but no other changes to any of the other funds. Those are all remain the same as they were presented. And I'm happy to answer any additional questions. I'm sure a lot of the other directors and city manager are as well. But if there are no other further things other than the potential boxing, the youth boxing funding, then we would bring back the budget. I'd put it into a portrait format, make it printer-friendly, and then it would be adopted on June 15th based on the current proposed 2 budget. We don't anticipate there being any other changes at this point.
Sounds good.
Yeah,
Excellent.
that's sounds very good. We really appreciate the time and effort that's been put into this, and it just inspires confidence, I think, in moving forward. There's been so many pieces dropped through the cracks over the years, and we feel like Tyler and you have, in the last couple of years, really brought us to where we need to be. So thank you.
Just a couple comments, if I may, Mayor. I'd be remiss if I didn't bring up that while this budget is almost budget neutral as far as the reserve goes, there's not included, and Carla has mentioned multiple times, there's still no long-term planning that's built into our budget. We hope, as Carla and I continue to work through items that we have on our to-do list, that we come with some long-term planning on CIPs, infrastructure, building up that reserve, quote-unquote, rainy day fund. So that's important to know that this is basically we're predicting that we're going to meet our operating expenses with that revenue coming in. Mm-hmm. And lastly, I want to thank again all the department heads, Carla, finance, staff. It's a lot of painful processes behind the scenes, and to be where we're at is as Councilmember Nava had said, a pleasant surprise to where we have been in the couple of years prior. Thank you.
Yes.
Yeah.
Also mentioned that with COVID, it's quite an accomplishment, I think, that we're at the level that we are with the budget, because I think there are some other municipalities, not necessarily here in the valley, but I think around the country, that are struggling with these issues, and we seem to have come out of it a little better than some of the other ones, although we still struggle a little bit. We might be even in better shape if that COVID had not happened, so
Yeah.
very nice.
Mr. Mayor, if I can also make a comment. I know each one of our sessions I've echoed this, but I continue to get input from members of the public of kind of the confidence that you were talking about, Mr. Mayor, that's being inspired, but just again, not just the presentation, but also considering, you can argue this was probably the most trying time for many of us, whether you're associated with the city or city government or not. If you're just on the planet Earth, going through a pandemic, and I'm not saying it's over, but to come through and not only are we on track to pass a budget on time, but onboarding a new finance director, doing a full IT software migration transition, it's just tremendous, again, what the staff has done. So very, very, very encouraged at where we're at this point. So again, I know there's a lot of hard work ahead, as always, but I hope everyone can remember the past few years, how much more of a painful process this has been. And a lot of it is, some cases, maybe conditions we don't control, but you can see here when you can control the things you can, and we pull together, it's just, it really reflects in this budget. So I appreciate it, Carl, for your work, and Tyler and the rest of the staff.
No, I would also share those comments. It's not lip service. It's impressive work. I mean, it really is. And so from your presentations and everybody working together from city staff, finance department, or city manager, it really is impressive, because I know what we have to work with, and so, and if anybody looks at our budget, it's a number of accounts from the general fund and everything else that you're having to deal with it and really forecast and see. And so it's a complicated document. It's not easy. City finance is not like the private sector. It's very, very different. And so I do appreciate the work that you've done, and everyone else in every department. So thank you all very much for doing that. And I'm really, I am surprised in that we're in a better position, but I'm not surprised, because I know that you're all working very hard at that. So I do appreciate it. It's not lip service. I know when people aren't used to it, like maybe members of the public that aren't used to city budgets and that process, it may seem like it's no big, feat, but for us that do see it year after year, it is a big thing. Mm-hmm. So congratulations on that, and thank you for coming on board in just a short time, and really, I'll be honest with you in that Tyler and your presentations are very different, you know? And this is no criticism of anybody, but I can tell you, one compliment that I'll pay you here is that the presentations you've made have been concise, easy to understand, even for us here, and I think the public appreciates that as well. So, good job on that, and, you know, in working with Tyler, no knock on Tyler, you know.
waiting for that.
But you know, and he said it. I mean, he said it when you were hired. I remember asking him specifically, you know, what's she like? He says, you know, she might even be better than me, George. I said, well, then let's bring her on board. And that's the confidence that he has in you. So, congratulations to everybody, and thank you very much for working hard on it. And that's how we build a good team. You get better people around you, and that's what I do appreciate. So anyway.
He grills me behind the scenes,
Hey,
by the
I'm
way.
sure he does. I'm sure he does. But you know what? That's what he should be doing, right? And you're stepping up to that level too. So that's, you know, says something about you as well. So anyway, thank you.
So for the record, I'm not a PowerPoint expert, is that?
Yeah. Hey. Right? You know?
In my book.
We leverage each other's resources.
There you
Yeah.
go. And that's important, right? So, but we all do, right?
Yeah, no, Carla, he was right on point. I certainly appreciated being my first year on council. I was actually dreading this. I knew it was coming up, and I thought it was going to be very difficult for me. You know, I run a small business. My numbers are tiny compared to all of this, and the way that it's broken down. And again, I come from the private sector, so looking at all these funds and the way they're broken down, and it was not difficult to understand because you made it that way, and I appreciate that. And you know, I look forward to the years coming, so it won't be too difficult for us. So thank you.
Yes. And I forgot to mention that all of the notes that we put in these documents, we'll put in the final budget as well, because that is our leaving, kind of our data, our set
And,
that we reference throughout the year, that the staff will reference as well. And so we took the time to put those in the proposed budget, and we will put those in the final budget as well, and in the financial system.
Also, there'll be a lot of changes probably as we move along.
Okay, thank you very much, Carla.
And
Thank
Tyler
you.
is not a PowerPoint expert, just so you all know.
Right.
Nice.
And so on June 15th, from what we've heard here with council today, you'll have a budget for your adoption approval on the next council meeting. So
Good.
thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
It'd be good to have this behind us.
Seriously, right? I mean, we've been in times where we have it, so.
Yeah, there have been years when it's been 6 months later that we were finally adopting it, so this is very encouraging. All right, we'll move on to item 5, the city manager report. Tyler Salcido.
Thank you, Mayor. First on the item here, item A is illegal dumping within the city limits. We continue to have to put it mildly, a challenge. Just big bulky items being dumped in alleyways faster than we can go through and cleaning it up. Republic has been very responsive when we asked for that help, and Public Works, Guillermo's team have been real responsive to trying to at least mitigate it somewhat. But I felt it was important that we bring back to the public to help them understand that Republic has services that will pick up bulky items curbside from single-family residents, multifamily residences, or like apartments or what have you, once per month on the schedule. All you have to do is call them. We have the phone number available. That's 760-337-2418. And if you need to call at least 24 hours prior, but they'll pick up all those big items for you. You just put it out front, and we need to really make an effort to keep these alleyways clean and the city streets and what have you. With that being said, Chief and I, Chief Duran, are working on the enforcement piece as well. We're talking about potentially getting some mobile cameras to stage in certain alleyways that have been a major challenge for us, and to actually go after these continued citizens that have continued to dump in the alleyways. With all that being said, the negative piece, we do have some positive comments from the chief, which is refreshing, that we have some citizens and some community service groups that are offering to be part of the solution as opposed to just having complaints for us. So maybe you can expand a little about that on Chief, please.
And while Chief comes up, I have talked to our city manager with respect to illegal dumping. I've had recently, he's helped and assisted, and Republic Services has assisted in picking up trash from alleyways. But what happens is that we clean them out, and then they dump in the same location again. So I'm not sure if it's part education, where people may think that, oh, that's what you do, and then it gets picked up, and then they're doing it again. And so it's creating a cycle. But, excuse me for just a second, Chief, but my thought was either we can do a news story on illegal dumping and cover the items that we're talking about, or just do a video ourselves. I'd be willing to do that, where we talk about it, talk about the enforcement part, talk about the fact that Republic Services picks it up, describe what illegal dumping is, and maybe even tell the story of how people are dumping in the same locations. It may or may not. We can give them that benefit of the doubt, at least initially, right?
Yeah.
And then move from there. But anyway, that's just, I'd like to do that sooner than later, just because there's trash everywhere, like bulky items everywhere, so. anyway.
Yeah, just, yep, go ahead, sir.
No, great point. No, go ahead, Chief.
Thank you, Chief.
Yeah, just
Sorry about
to
that.
give you an example, today we sent one of our staff members out there just to check out what was out there, because it seems to happen over the weekend, especially long weekends. We identified 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12 locations today that were not there last week.
Right.
I mean, I showed the pictures to our city manager. We're talking about, mattresses. I should have put it on a PowerPoint, right? But seriously, I mean, couches. I'm
I can
looking
do
at
that
him
for you.
here. I'm describing it. Just piles of rubbish. I mean, more couches. I mean, you name it, it's there. It's unacceptable. We've been talking to our community members, and we have, although it's not our per se our job 100% of the police department, but we understand that it's part of what we need to do. The cleanup part, that's what I'm talking about. Prevention, it is our part, and we accept that responsibility, and we are working on that. Like City Manager Salcido said, we are working on hopefully putting some cameras up there. We're also working on putting additional, although we're short, we're going to push it. We're going to make it happen, put a couple of units out there to ensure that we look out specifically for this type of behavior. Illegal dumping and graffiti, as you know, graffiti, big problem. But luckily, we got some community members that are stepping up. We also met with the Chamber of Commerce last week, and they seem pretty interested in helping out as well. We met with Republic Services, and we actually, what we did is we brought these community members that wanted to help out, because they approached us, how do we help? So it's actually Pastor Joe from Gateway Church and Pastor Sean from Christ Community Brawley branch, I guess, like a better word. So Gateway is going to be helping out with graffiti abatement. In Christ Community, they're going to be helping out with trash pickup, and they're actually already scheduled one. They're so motivated, they want to do it now. So on June 19th, we're scheduling our first one, but again, it has to also be coupled with prevention, education, and enforcement. So we're going to make sure that we do this in a good way, not just let them pick it up and paint, but we need to make sure that this doesn't continue to happen again. So appreciate everybody's support on this guy. I think we're all on the same sheet of music, and we're hoping that this will take us in the right way. And that's why we also met with the Chamber of Commerce, because it's important that the business community also understands that this is a problem. It's happening. For some reason, most of these dumps are right. It's on the frontage alleys, I would call it. That's right behind businesses for some reason. I don't know why, but that's the problem.
There's a mattress right now, like in a box spring, right near my business, and right before that there was like couches they'd left. So it's just, I mean, it continues. It goes maybe one day where it's cleaned up, and then they dump again, and I miss who's doing it. I think I have an idea, but, until I see them, I'm not, I obviously can't just accuse somebody, but it's a problem.
Chief, from...
Can I just say, too, that it takes no effort at all to get Republic to come to your
Yeah,
house.
it doesn't,
In the last 2 months, I had to get rid of the stove, a washer and dryer. You just put it on the curb, and they come, and while they were there, they're picking up other stuff. I mean, it's so easy. It's one phone call.
Yeah, you're right, absolutely.
If I put it on the curb at South Imperial, they pick it up in an hour, and somebody takes it somewhere. I don't know what they do with it. But I put a free sign, man, it's gone in an hour, man. But I'll tell you, this problem has been a historical problem for us since the county closed their regional dump sites, and because people could just take it out of town and dump it here in about 5 or 10 minutes. Now they have to travel all the way over to the dump site that the county has, and they can dump it over there, some of it, but Republic will come and get it, but But I don't know what drives people. Sometimes I think, and the reason why they dump by businesses on the weekend is because no one's there.
Yeah.
And no one's in the alley, no one's in the alley at night, and that's kind of what happens. They won't dump in residential areas because people will see them.
Yes.
And so that's an ongoing issue. How we resolve it, I think people just need a new awareness, and maybe we'll be able to do some enforcement, and we may be able to cut down on it anyway. I mean, see what we can do.
Yes, that was
positively.
something we also addressed with some of the businesses, especially the ones on Main Street. We actually met with 197 businesses, had the officers go knock and do a crime prevention assessment, plus talk about this problem. A lot of it has to do with lack of lighting. A lot of businesses, they don't
Yeah.
have lighting in the
Yeah.
alley. So
Yep.
we're actually also talked to some of them, hopefully that they will help us out in that respect, because I believe that's what's leading to this. It's dark in the alley, so perfect place to dump.
Chief, I want to apologize because I RSVP'd for that cleanup last week. Something pressing came up. We were dealing with the deported veteran situation. But would it make sense, I guess, to explore this, the drone service that you had brought up in the past, perhaps a little more, and what the costs are, and maybe how that would help alleviate a lot of this issue, I think.
Yes.
And we're able to deploy, especially on the weekends or at nighttime when this is happening.
Yes, we're actually working with the city manager already on this, and we're hoping to put a presentation by mid-July, or which should be the second city council meeting. So hopefully we can put a presentation on what we intend to do with the program.
And cheaper.
Because it's really going to be a combined, it's going to be a public safety program. It's not going to be a police. We're actually meeting with fire as well on this. Chief York is on board, and we're going to try to make it a multi-purpose drone program.
That's
We
great.
we have a lot of cleaning up to do in the city, and it's, honestly, it's, we already have some resources that people can use, and they just don't. That's, maybe, like I said, it's part education, but it's also the enforcement part too. I mean, it boils down to that, right?
I think a lot of it is education, because I bring this up all the time, and folks have no idea.
Yeah, I have no
And,
idea. No, I've heard that before as well.
So quite a
But-
bit, 9 out of 10 don't know.
And because, like, for example, like, I'm having it addressed quickly, so they think, oh, somebody came to pick it up, and they go and dump again, so that may be part of
It's
the
Friday
problem.
service.
And it's a little bit off topic, but it's on topic. I know we just went through the budget discussion, but it's something we've talked about before. If you drive around Brawley right now, I know part COVID, but man, it looks ugly. Like, there's weeds everywhere, grass growing everywhere. It's just nasty out there. It really is. And it's a lot of business owners that are not doing anything with their properties. If you go to, like, stores and you see what the parking lots look like, and you see the weeds growing everywhere, I was like, man, they're not taking care of their business. I do, and I won't let mine get that way, that's for sure, but others don't. We used to have the prison crew a few years back, and now that COVID's going to start to clear out, maybe that's another opportunity to look at the county
Trustee program.
trustee program, to where they can come out and clean public right-of-ways and things like that. I mean, that's really the only way to address such a broad issue, over the course of time. I know it's a little bit expensive, but might be a good investment for our community. So anyway,
Has to be a good community service program.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's something I've mentioned to Tyler before, and off of what Julie Reeves mentioned this evening. I don't get that. I look at businesses that have been doing great business during COVID, but like out by the Walmart corridor, I see some businesses that aren't watering their landscaping, so
yeah.
everything's dead,
I don't
and weeds
get it.
have grown up
I
through the
don't get
rocks
it.
and stuff.
Yeah.
And I don't understand. Is there some kind of ordinance that we can enforce that we already have on the books with business owners who aren't keeping up their landscaping? Do we have that in the Brawley Community Code?
I'm not sure if we do or not, so I'll have to take a look.
I've researched it, and I've seen it in other cities. It's just pretty succinct, cut and dried. You have to maintain your landscaping if you're a business, and it just seems ridiculous that businesses that are doing well through COVID aren't maintaining their property. I don't get that.
We do have a landscape ordinance, but it's something city attorney and I could look at, see how we can strengthen that. Thank you, Chief, for that. Also, we're going to be regularly posting on social media again. I know that's a limited means of messaging out, but we're doing it from all areas that we can
Where
think
we've
of.
been most successful, quite honestly, is when we post and not the city, because it's a limited audience.
Yeah, we have
And
more followers than you.
We'll be able to get that broad message out. I know if I do an interview, I know that it's gonna get a ton of views, so it's like, let's just do something like that to get the video out. And
So
get,
do a bilingual one. I think a bilingual message and do a
Yeah.
Spanish one.
cool, you can do
You
it
knock it out.
in Japanese right here. You can do it
In Japanese.
Yeah.
Not Donnie.
Do you
Not
speak
Donnie.
Japanese? Yeah.
Yeah,
That's
speak
awesome.
Japanese.
Really, I didn't know
It's
that.
half Japanese, brother.
I know he is.
Son of an immigrant.
Yeah, see?
Thank you, and thank you, Chief.
Thank you.
Surprise me every day more.
So the next item under my report is the utility assistance grants. And Councilmember Nava had asked that we bring something back and to report out on that. And that's what we have here for you today. Armando, do I have to go down there, or can you operate it for me? Okay. Give it a minute here for coming up. Wrong one. It's the one entitled Utility.
The last
It
one.
would be-
The
actually,
first
it'd be
one.
the first one,
The
actually.
first one, Armando. Yeah.
There we go.
There it is.
Okay, so for full disclosure, I did not prepare this PowerPoint, as you can well see there. So
Neither did the janitor.
Yeah, so I just, for the record, public record there. So what we have currently as of May 28th, we have for water, sewer, and trash, we have approximately about $252,000 of delinquent accounts. That is about 115 roughly % higher than this time a year ago. And it's about 554 accounts for the agency. What we do have available, and we want to emphasize, there are two programs. One from the county, CARES COVID funds. We still have available $115,000 on that program. We, back in November, December, we made a huge effort by finance, calling everybody to try to get people interested in that. We're doing that again on that program, and we'll see on the future slides there. But the other program we have is the CDBG grant that finally came in, and that's awarded $126,000 for senior citizens.
For seniors.
Senior citizens. So I think that's it on that slide. Mondo can.
Can you go back for a second? I just
Okay.
need the phone number. Thank you. Thank you.
Next slide, thank you. So here's side by side the details of each program. They're pretty similar. Again, as we discussed, for the federal funding, the CDBG, that's age 62 and over. Both grants have the past due bills after January 1st, 2020. And the one for the county monies, it's water and sewer and trash services only, whereas the other one can be used for electric, broadband, and gas services as well for the senior citizens. It's important to note that the utility companies will be paid directly. It's not given to the citizens or whoever applies. And there's no duplication of benefits. In other words, if you apply for this one, you're not eligible for the other. And the county and the CDBG funds are until we use them all up. Next slide, please. What are we doing? How are we outreaching? How are we trying to get a hold of, let everybody know that we have these options? First of all, it's on the website with the applications and the description of both programs on our City of Brawley website. You can actually click on the application to get the information you need. Social media updates we've been doing. The council meeting update, of course, is today. Targeted customer contact, like I had mentioned before, back in December, we're starting, as if finance doesn't have anything else to do, we're continuing to make phone calls again and to try to get that message out. In July, we will customize messages on the bill with the new system, just letting people know on a regular basis that we have this money out there. And also, which is a very good idea, we're proposing to meet in person with the senior center when that opens up to go straight to the source. A lot of senior citizens will be in there when that's fully open. We did hire a senior citizen center coordinator, easy for me to say. So we're moving as fast as we can to get that facility back open. The only pending item there is the county with their testing, and they're actively trying to secure another facility where they can move out. And once that's completed, we can move out in and get going. And then also, public press release is in progress that we're going to prepare. Is there any questions?
Thank you for the update. I've already provided some information out.
What
to
type
somebody.
of, I know for the senior citizens, they have to provide some income eligibility possibly, or is that requirement?
It is required for the first one, the accounting, and I think it's 63,000 and change, and then it's 70-something thousand over four in the household. And it has to be COVID-related, but it's important to note that these are self-certifying programs, which means all we're asking them is to sign a document that says, yes, it was COVID-related and you are eligible, and that will meet the requirements for both grants. It's self-certifying. So
That's money that's just provided for their bill. I mean, you would think people would be jumping at the chance, but I'm not sure they know about it, or else they're just not aware.
And of course, I should note that we're waiting guidance from the state of California, because currently we haven't been able to. We've been on hold as far as charging interest and shutting off the services that are getting real delinquent. That's been, potentially part of the issue. When the governor says that the agencies can do that, we're not going to automatically go around and shut everybody off. That's not the plan.
No, but eventually that will happen.
But we have also reached out with flyers in the utility service and on phone calls and offered everybody for a payment plan. Hey, come in with us. We're willing to work with you up to a year of paying the money back. And so we're not going to be swinging the heavy hammer up front, but eventually.
Yeah, eventually it comes to roost.
That's all I have. Thank you.
Great. Thanks, Tyler. Thanks for that PowerPoint presentation. Okay, we will move on to item 6, regular business. 6A is a discussion and direction regarding a cell tower lease agreement at 221 East Magnolia Street here in Brawley. And Tyler, are you?
It was requested by council to add to the agenda today. We're looking for discussion and direction and public comments on the cell tower lease at 221 East Magnolia Street, Brawley. So, Mayor, however you seem fit, we could open up to, if I'm sure there's some people in the audience that wish to speak on this, and then we'll pending all the comments, we will stand by for direction from council.
Okay. Yeah, if anyone has public comment. Right there.
Good evening, Nicole Rothfleisch, 129 South El Cerrito Drive. And I just want to mention real quick, based on one of your previous agenda items, thank you for addressing the dumping issue, and because, I live next door to one of those nasty trash-filled places, so thank you for addressing that. Mayor Hamby, City Council members, Mr. Salcido, by the way, it's nice to meet you in person. I know your
Likewise.
mom, she's lovely. Thank you for putting this project on hold while we take some time to review the details and get input from the community, and thank you for the opportunity to address this tonight. I was not aware that this item was on the agenda for today until yesterday afternoon. Thank you, Mr. Couchman. So I don't really feel adequately prepared to address it at this time. I was frantically throwing my comments together out in the audience right now on my computer. But I'm going to at least bring up a hodgepodge of questions I have for this right now and get some of my concerns on public record. And I will email these comments to you so that you can have a chance to respond to them. I don't consider this a public hearing since there was no notice given, and I encourage you to please not take action on this issue until more time is given to get all the information out there and give the public time to respond. Also, I know that there are several people who would want to be here, like Julie Reeves, but they're at a championship Little League game tonight being held at the very facility in question. I want to thank Mr. Salcido for promptly responding to my request for information thus far. And there is a letter pending response at this time, so I will also raise those questions again here since I don't know the answers to them yet. Any project requires a certain process to be followed. This should be done in an orderly manner, and the public should always have the opportunity to voice their concerns as well as support or opposition. It's proven that these towers decrease property value, which affects your property tax income. Therefore, the League of Cities actually came out with a lengthy document a few years back showing cities how to avoid having such towers in their communities, and much of my information and questions stem from this document, and I'm happy to pass it on to any of you in case you don't have it. My understanding is that the city has to follow its own ordinances, so the city and its lessee, Vertical Bridge Development, would need to comply with the city's communications ordinance. 8C.4 and 8C.5 do not exempt communications facilities proposed on city-owned property. The lease between the city and Vertical Bridge Development clearly states that it's for communications facilities. So I can't figure out how in one of your responses, you cited 27.21 from the zoning code that would apply in this situation unless there's a zone in Brawley where no conditional use permits are required. My reading of 27.21 is that the city has the authority to treat this like any other zone, but it doesn't say the city can do anything it wants. What is the zone where no conditional use permits are required? If there is no such zone, then how is it that you, or city attorney, read 27.21 to give the city authority to disregard the city's own laws? That's not what 27.21 says. I have a really hard time believing that you don't have to have a CUP for a project like this. This property has a certain land use for open recreational as a public park, and you're changing it to commercial development, which automatically requires a California Environmental Quality Act review, one that needs to be done professionally and with public review. You cannot put a commercial development in a public park without a CEQA review. Changing land use automatically triggers this. If additional providers are to co-locate on the tower, which the site plan indicates is the plan for it, that also automatically triggers a CEQA review prior to approving the project, per the the League of Cities document, which requires a public hearing. If there are any kinds of impacts, they need to be addressed in a mitigated negative declaration. It's my understanding that to put up a communications tower with multiple providers, that there is a requirement to do a radiation frequency emissions test to find out what levels this site is going to produce and whether they fall within health requirements. Was this done? What are the requirements for strobe lights for safety? There's a Verizon tower at State Highway 98 and Cole Road that's 90 feet tall, so that's what, like 30 feet less than this one, 20 feet less than this one, and they have lighting on it for aircraft safety purposes. It seems like there should be lighting for aircraft safety for this one, but if there are lights, how will strobe lights like this affect the ball players, the fans watching, and people living and trying to sleep in the area? This is another reason that this location is not ideal. I believe I read in the lengthy contract that guy wires are mentioned, but I don't see them in the site plan. And this has all happened very fast and lots of documents to read, so I may have missed something, but I'm wondering what the situation is with that. I'm curious as to why the city council members were not aware of the details of this project prior to voting on it. I'm also curious as to why the city manager's signature is on a contract like this. It's my understanding that the city council approves or denies contracts, and therefore they usually have the mayor's signature. It's also my understanding that the county and city ordinances do not allow for these towers in residential areas. I was told by someone from the county that when the county adopted these ordinances, the cities around the county followed suit. Can you please let me know if Brawley is the only city that did not do this? Mayor Hamby, when you ran for this position, it was on a platform that included cleaning up the eyesores in our town, not only downtown, but even addressing the unsightly dead grass in our parks and recreation areas. This enormous tower, that is likely the tallest structure in the city, will be adding an unsightly eyesore in one of our nicer areas of town. I would hope that all of you are in agreement that we need to beautify our town, and based on the illegal dumping issue you addressed a few minutes ago, I believe that this is something you care about. Was an alternative locations analysis done? Is there a reason that another city property like the landfill that is not so close to houses and where children congregate could not be used for this project? Is there any data showing that this is the only possible site for this project? There's never going to be perfect communication with cell phones anywhere, and that's a given, not something I'm so concerned about that I would want something like this in one of our neighborhoods. They may be paying rent, but $1,600 a month, that's not even $20,000 a year, is nothing and totally not worth the trade-off. The city should not be this desperate and should be able to come up with other revenue sources. The other incentives offered, such as batting cages and lights, are also not worth the trade-off of having something like this there for the next 50 years, which is what the lease agreement is for, when we don't know what the long-term ramifications will be. I understand that the FCC does not recognize radiation health issues from these towers, but remember that the tobacco industry did not recognize health issues from smoking 50 years ago, and look what we've learned. This is not something that we want in our neighborhood and in our sports complex where the kids congregate, period. It seems as though some important processes were circumvented prior to executing this agreement, and I really hope that we can work together to go back to do this properly and work on finding a more suitable location for this project. I hope you will all please listen to the concerns of your constituents and do what's best for the community. I look forward to receiving your responses to my questions and continuing this important discussion. Thank you for listening.
Thank you. There's, Mrs. Rothfleisch, there's a lot there, and I do believe that some of those questions have not been addressed yet to the city from you, is that right?
Right.
Okay.
Most of these are new questions that have just come up since reviewing some additional documents, but there were a couple that I have already emailed to you, but it was only like a day ago.
Yeah.
So I just wanted to let you know I included those in here, even though I did already send you a letter.
Okay, Mayor, well, I guess we should see if there's any other comments?
Yeah.
Sorry.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Good evening.
Hi.
My name is Rachel Cato. My husband, Tom Cato, couldn't be here. He wanted to come, but he was caught up with something that kept him from coming. Everything that Nikki said, I echo. I won't repeat all of what she said. But my husband and I are first-time home buyers. We've lived in that neighborhood. We lived right across the street from this park where this tower is intended to be built, and I strongly oppose it. I would like to ask you if you would please consider a different location. It's going to, I'm concerned about the devaluing of the property that where we live. My neighbor was here, but they had to leave because of their son playing again at that park where children are all over that place. I mean, the football field, baseball, soccer, little tots to high school, and even adults go down there on weekends and have their games. It's a very busy place. And I'm very concerned about the tower and the health issues that I have been aware of that may come up as a result of having that tower there. Radioactive waves are nothing to smile at or to shrug your shoulder at or to mock in any way. Just like Ms. Rothflesh said, cigarettes were considered okay until, 50, 60 years later, we have the results of that. I won't go too much into it. I just found out about it last night. And I'm a warrior. I will rally my neighbors, and I would like to have them come here to express their feelings to you. And so I ask that you table this decision until we are able to talk to the neighbors. I did talk to some. One did come, the others were not. It was late notice. I'm a teacher, and I work till 3, and I work at Califat. So anyway, point is, please reconsider. I am very concerned and saddened by when I heard about it, because I know that I would sell my house and move away if that were to happen. I would tell the neighbors about it. I would tell them about the dangers and about the problems that I perceive would arise from having this tower built there. So thank you for listening and for giving me this opportunity.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Any other public comment on it? Okay. Bill, do you have any quick response to some of the questions that you've heard today?
Well, Ms. Rothflesh says she's going to email us. It's much better to put responses in writing to comply with our duties on that. I think that's the way to do it. We were asked to put this on so council could give us direction if they wanted to. It's not on for action.
Right.
It's just on. So there's no worry that somebody's going to take action right now, because we put it on because we were requested to.
Right. So is the project currently on hold?
There hasn't been any construction, but they're in the process, Gordon, correct me if I'm wrong, but pulling plans and permits and that kind of thing.
And the item has been approved by council.
Right, it's been approved by council.
We did approve it.
And I guess the main concern, I know there are probably 2 areas of concern. One is the health impact. One is the process, the legal process, whether we followed the letter of the law in doing it this way. And I think the concern about transparency is that, we did something in closed session in a way that was not legal or ethical. And the fact is that any type of real estate transaction that comes before us in a closed session manner, we would have to afford that same right to whoever comes to us with a real estate transaction. And so that is why it was on closed session in that way. I hear the concerns. I think there are some valid concerns there, and we appreciate the fact that citizens are concerned that we're following procedure, we're following the law when it comes to this stuff, and it is good to have watchful eyes on the city council. But of course, with most of these legal concerns, we defer to our city attorney, because he knows better than all of us put together what the legal thing is to do.
Well, Mr. Mayor, I'm sorry if I can cut off just on that point. I think the important thing is maybe getting the answers crafted, in writing, because you got the questions that were submitted. I don't disagree. I don't agree with, some of the questions that were being posed, or even the statements that were made with them, but that's okay. That's part of the process. So I'm hoping, let's get the answers.
I can explain why there was no CUP required. It's because that piece of ground is zoned to allow a tower there.
Yeah.
With a CUP, but because the city owns it and the city council's the ultimate authority on what gets put there, our zoning ordinance doesn't require us to go through that. And that question was, do we have to do it? And the answer was no. So that's why.
Also, sir, if you would get some clarification on the CEQA review, I'm pretty sure that we don't need it, but if you could find the language that specifies why we don't need it, I would appreciate that.
We'll address all of Mrs. Rothflesh's concerns and.
Thank you, sir.
Yeah.
Any other comment? George, do you have anything to say?
No comment.
I don't really have any comment.
Okay. All right, well then, as it stands, the direction is just to reply to those concerns that Nicole Rothfleisch brought, and you'll respond to her, but we would appreciate also, you know, being CC'd on that. And obviously, if there's something procedurally that was done incorrectly, then that'll give us a reason to go back and vote again. But I think if things were followed the way they should have been, that the decision has been made, and that it's just part of the process. Yeah.
Okay, so I have another question, and I look forward to receiving your responses. However, my understanding is that you put this project on hold to bring it back for public review and input, right? But there was no notice, no timely notice given for this meeting. So my question is this what you're considering your time for public input, or are you going to be bringing this back at a later date for public comment?
The agenda is posted in advance of every meeting, and so with respect to the item being placed on the agenda, it's done just like everything else.
Okay,
So
but George.
it's not a public hearing. It's not a public
Right,
hearing.
right. Are you going to have a public hearing? Because my understanding is the whole reason you put it on hold and brought it back to the, put it back on the agenda was to get public comment on it, but nobody knew about it. I mean, people
We're
aren't
receiving
going
public comment
online.
now. You've listed multiple questions to us that you've posed not only to the
Right.
city council, but to the city attorney. So they've already addressed some of them, and they're going to address your concerns and your comments and your questions. So with respect to a public hearing, the decision has already been made at this point. This is just an opportunity for you to express some of the concerns that you had, some of the questions that you had, and that's what's being addressed at this point.
So no one in the neighborhood was given any notice about this, and you
The
think
entire
that this is
community-
adequate?
The entire
for-
community's been given notice on this. This agenda is a public document. It's transparent, and it's at the same location it is at every
George, how many
single-
people in this community go online and check these agendas every day?
This is placed on Facebook, it's on social media, it's being addressed in quite a few people. We've also, just so you know, Nicole, just so you know, there's also been comment with respect to support of the tower. It's not just people that are opposed to it. So you have to understand, we interact with the public all the time, and we receive calls on different topics. It's not just this particular topic. But I can tell you, when I've addressed it with people on a personal level, it's been in support of. So to answer some of your concerns and some of your comments, like who views it, there's many people that do because they've approached us about it. I speak for myself, but I know that in speaking to other council members, they've also received calls. So I understand where you're coming from, but I'm telling you that many people are heavily engaged in this public process. So it's not just thinking that this is being skirted by or it's not being addressed thoroughly by the city council.
So do you feel that whether it was legal or not, I'm talking ethics and your responsibility to your constituents, do you feel like adequate notice was given to the community, to the neighborhood, to the people that live right across the street from this, that this tower was going to be going in?
As Mayor Hamby has stated, and he stated it very clearly, with respect to real estate transactions, they are placed on our agenda in a manner that is respectful of the privacy of the applicant. It's addressed by the city council because, quite honestly, that's a negotiation that happens. And yes, to answer your question, yes, it was placed. It's a transparent process. It was on the agenda. It's very clear. And people also have the opportunity to express their concerns in public comment, just like you have done today. So, and those public comments come in all sorts and fashions, whether it's a phone call, whether it's an email, whether it's a posting on social media, whatever that is. And they come all the time. So this isn't anything new. It's not anything, I understand it's of concern to you, but it doesn't mean that we haven't placed a high level of concern on the topic either, okay? So I want to make that super clear.
Okay, I understand that this was a real estate lease agreement, and that's why it was done in closed session. But in general, this is a communications issue. This is a tower that affects the people in the community, and that makes it a public issue as well. And in every other city I've ever heard of these being put in, they always have a public hearing. They provide notice, not just putting it on some obscure closed session agenda.
Well, just so you know, there is, there was a push to get many cell towers put on public utility poles. So, you know, what you're considering a lack of transparency, I'm telling you, it was transparent. It was on the agenda. It's been placed there. We've discussed it. We gave you an opportunity again, and you've gone multiple times back and forth using city resources, and it's being addressed by our city attorney. They've also addressed your concerns. You had a public request for public information. That was provided very thoroughly. The contract agreement's there. All of the supporting documentation is there. So I'm not sure what else you can provide that's going to change at least my mind or anybody else's. Because quite honestly, I've heard comments from both speakers here today stating that there's concerns about health. If you know something that we don't know, Nicole, if you're telling me there's some concern that I'm not aware of that will change my mind, please let me know now. Because quite frankly, if that's the argument that you're making, I don't know how I'm going to be able to support that. Okay?
That's not the argument I'm making. I
I've
raised
heard it here before.
numerous concerns. Property values. I mean, nobody wants this over there.
I just finished telling you that
Okay.
there are people that do.
Okay, well, there are hundreds of people that don't, but they
Hundreds
haven't
of
been
people.
given.
Hundreds of people.
Okay, yes, I know it's hundreds of people
There's two
because
people here on this topic here today.
because no one knew about this.
Are we going to go back and forth in a public meeting? I'm telling you, we go through this. There's so many items on this agenda. I'll tell you, our budget discussion's been very, very thorough. All the items that we discuss have been thoroughly examined. This is a public forum. We have online meetings for a specific reason, to get people to engage themselves, and they have. And that's the reason we're continuing to broadcast these meetings. This is live right now, and I'm sure there's public comment on there as well. But I can tell you, it's as transparent as it can be. The meetings are held every other Tuesday at the same time. It's published the same way. The agenda's, presented the week before. It's there for public, information and for them to engage. And I can tell you that I receive that engagement, and I hope I'm not speaking for the rest of council, but I think I can, in that you receive public comment as well. So this isn't an argument with you, Nicole, but I'm telling you, it is, when you're making comments to make it seem or alluding to the fact that maybe it was done in a way that wasn't transparent enough for you, or it wasn't transparent or done incorrectly or done in a way that is ethically wrong or anything else, I take exception to that too, because I work in an ethical manner, and I do support the city, and I support the development in the city. I support the citizens of the city, and I know the rest of council does as well. We take public input, and we take it seriously. I respect your position. I respect your input, but it doesn't mean that if you're going to be providing information where it's going to be changing our mind, I think that's important to say. But by raising questions and raising more questions and raising more questions, we're providing that input to you, and it's not clarifying enough. I'm not sure what else can be provided to you to clarify the points even further.
Because I don't know enough about the project yet to even give thorough, adequate input on it. So I'm trying to get information, and there hasn't been very much time to do that. That's why I'm asking questions right now.
I think you've been provided
and the two city
very sufficient
councilmen,
information.
there's two city councilmen that I did speak with, thank you for discussing this with me, did not know a lot about the project. They hadn't even seen the specs on it yet. So, I mean, you can't tell me that it was thoroughly reviewed and examined and everything before being voted on.
Wait a second, time out. I was one of those council members, and it's knowing the specifics and the engineering blueprints, if you will, did not know. But I think we can all agree, we know the location, we know all that. I think we had a good discussion on that. So, Nicole, I just want to be careful. I think we can have dialogue, but remember, when you come up and you ask, a bunch of questions, absolutely legitimate that we still will respond to, but in some of them, they're leading based on an opinion, which you can share. But I have my opinion too, and I shared mine, I think, pretty specifically when we spoke on the phone, and I'm willing to share it here. And that's, I believe I made the comment, and if you can remember, it was, if there's compelling information to bring forward, that would certainly be worth listening and discussing in a session, open or closed. I've heard none, so,
I
thus
can't
far.
bring compelling information forward until I have a thorough understanding of the project, and it's
we talked
complicated, so I'm trying to get that
several weeks
information.
ago, now we're, that it is complicated, and we do, I think as council members, push ourselves to ask the right questions, consult our subject matter experts, whether it be engineers, whether it be administrators, whether it be, the documentation and the recommendations that we're handed. So this isn't just blind approval. So that's why I didn't appreciate it. I thought there was a little bit of an insinuation that we don't even know where, the specifics of the project. There's a ton of information. I don't know how many pages are here in today's agenda, and I think this council is one of the more diligent ones I've served with that does their homework and as prepared as possible. I think our results have shown that. I think our decisions have shown that. There is no track record here that should insinuate that we're operating in a non-transparent way. That's the only thing I'm saying. That puts us on defense. And we're going to defend our city, because I will also say, I've received a lot of comment too that's also in support. I have to consider every comment, right? And so here we are. We will get the questions answered. And I think as far as the question of pause and not pause, I think the bottom line is the city manager stated, and I stated that as well. The project is not, there's not a shovel in the ground, it's not there. So unless there is a shovel in the ground.
No, not yet.
So I was standing by that. So this is an opportunity. We place this on the agenda specifically for you and anyone else that wanted to come speak. But I think we've come through, and I hope you can explain that to the public, that we had this conversation and we are following through on our conversation.
Right, and I appreciate that.
Yeah.
So my question now is, we're still in my opinion, this is the information gathering stage. I can't really bring you my comments and my opinions on it until I understand it thoroughly, and I'm still trying to do that. It's been a very short period of time for a complicated project and lease agreement. And so my question is, are you saying we're done now, or are we going to have time to get these answers and then process them and then come back with our thoughts on it and continue the discussion?
I think we've made it clear it's been done, with the exception of if there's compelling information. And we spoke a few weeks ago, so there's actually been ample time to bring, and if you're looking for compelling information, I can appreciate that. But remember, everyone has a different kind of a deliberation process, right? And there's many maybe that have already come to the conclusion that they're either accepting, either opposed or for the project, and they voice that. We're all different. Maybe we have a different threshold. But with that said, I understand you may not be satisfied yet of that information. I can appreciate that. We'll get more. And again, if there is compelling information, I push back a little bit. I made a comment about disagreeing. I disagree on some of the health comments and even the parallel with the tobacco industry. And the only reason I disagree with that, we live in a county where we put out thousands and thousands of pounds and gallons of economic compounds, and we rely very heavily on that to produce food and fiber. We both can appreciate that, right? And there's study after study, including class action lawsuits, connected to that long-term, effects. But I think as a public, bringing that up, you can't pick and choose which ones are healthy and unhealthy without the science and some backing to it. I'm pretty satisfied that we made a healthy decision in terms of being able to move forward with this. So I'm not convinced that the health portion, and that's the only part I wanted to push back.
That's fine. Take the health issue off the table.
Okay.
Yes, I have personal feelings on that, and I do believe there's science behind it, but I know the FCC doesn't acknowledge that, so take it off the table. But there are other issues and concerns, and when we did speak, and I appreciate our conversation, you said, we've got time, we can look through all of this, we've got plenty of time, but I don't think 2 or 3 weeks is plenty of time for the back and forth of getting the information, processing it, understanding it, getting it out to the public so they can understand it, and then we can all discuss if it's the best thing for our community.
Yeah, but I think we should move forward with the answer. I mean, we already concluded that, Nicole. It just, I think for the sake of this conversation, getting your questions that you posed today publicly, as well as any others you come up with, that's the same service we would provide anybody asking the question. And of course, making that available. There's nothing hidden in going down. As a matter of fact, I appreciate what you're doing because we're thoroughly vetting this topic, as far as I'm concerned. And so I think we answer those questions, we march forward. I'm going to stand by one thing: if there's compelling information not to, and I get that there's discussion of real estate. That's a whole nother matter. We can talk about. We do get that a lot when there's different projects that people disagree with, but time and time again, it never seems to manifest in actual values changing one iota, as a matter of fact. So I don't want to get into that part. I'll leave that open-ended. I think getting your questions answered to the best of our ability, we should do that and, press forward. If there's something compelling, I'll say the same thing to staff. If there's a reason to pause or stop or not do it, then I need to hear what that information is.
Yeah, if I may say, ma'am, I didn't catch your last name.
Rothfleisch?
Rothfleisch, Mrs. Rothfleisch. I'm familiar with this whole process. This is was my background in the Marine Corps, communications. We did a lot of this stuff. I worked around communications, multiplexing and whatnot, switchboards and all that. So I'm very familiar with the effects of radiation and actually what it takes to affect, the human body. With that said, I saw your comments on social media. I saw your comments, your letters that were sent in, and I take that very seriously. It wasn't done lightly. I don't feel that anything was done trying to hide anything because the proper procedures were followed. Now, transparency, if that was an issue, I did get a call and says, hey, man, we get it. We just, we thought that should have been out in the open. Well, because of the legalities, it had to be done in that manner. But I did go out to the community, and I talked to a lot of people. I am out and about, all the time. And I asked people who also made comments on your thread, and I asked people who made their own postings what their concerns were. And some of them were honestly not what I expected. But there weren't any real concerns. Nothing that would change my position on it. And while I appreciate everything you have to say, I know most of the answers to all your questions. Off the top of my head, I've seen it. I've been involved in it. But the only question that I had is, please show us a language for the secret, anything that would kick any secret review, because that concerns me. I don't think it will, and that concerns me. But I just want you to understand that we did take your comments into consideration. I did take it very seriously, and I did go out to the community and ask, and I don't know, I think I must talk to about 100 people on this subject. Not a single concern. And by the way, if I step out my front door, I'll be able to hit that tower with a rock. So my house, there's plenty of equity in it. I don't think I'll lose any value. My wife is a realtor, and I did ask her about that. No documents, no articles, anything showing that there would be a loss in property value. I also looked into the concerns because I have 3 young children who live in my home, a 2-story home. With this tower being at that elevation, I was concerned maybe at the second level we would be affected. Not at all. There's more with the cell phone that we carry on all day. So we looked into all of that. So I just want you to understand that, your concerns are valuable to me, and I'm sure as to the rest of my colleagues here. But again, I didn't see any compelling evidence unless it's some legal that would change my stand on this.
Thank you. So,
I'll provide a little bit of comment. I think that legally, when we post on the agenda, that's what our requirement is legally, to notify people that we're going to discuss an item, and we have it posted on an agenda, and people can come and see that or not. And in fact, I thought on your Facebook post that you did mention the June timeframe for the meeting, and so that was why I asked you on Monday. Yesterday, I asked you, I'll see you there at the meeting, and then and it was like you were
I just kind of
shocked.
assumed with the dialogue that's been going on that part of that would be, okay, it's on the agenda, so we're going to discuss it, but I hadn't heard that.
And I guess my mistake was in thinking that. But Also, I've done a lot of research on it because you raised the issues, and we did get some letters from public. I also have public that are supportive of the tower and the location, simply because it's not necessarily real close to a residential dwelling. I mean, and I've been over there and I've looked at it, and I've seen it. I know where it's going to go. I've been down the little driveway past the baseball fields, and I know where it's situated at. And in reality, in most cases, in Brawley, the towers that we currently have are in closer proximity to residentials than that tower is going to be. I checked with the FCC ruling, which says that they don't pose a threat. The American Cancer Society has pretty much said they don't pose a threat, at least as far as they know at this point in time. I checked with the FAA, and they say that airplanes must maintain a 500 feet level over the town, unless there's some extenuating circumstances to that. So there's no need really for lights on that. And according to the FAA documentation, there's no need for any kind of thing on that tower to notify aircraft, because they're not supposed to be that low. The light towers I checked, they're 75 feet versus the height of that tower. I think it may be 30 to 50 feet taller than they are, but that's not a large amount of height. And my concern there is, and the children that play there are not there 24/7. So they're not living in a house directly necessarily across the street from that tower, because that tower is it's kind of in the center there, and there's a lot of distance between that. There are some school sites there, but they won't be there 24/7. And then the children that play there are not going to be there 24/7. I certainly have some concerns about all of that. We were talking about putting a tower over at the Hidalgo Park and take down the water tower, which may in some cases prove to be more of a hazard than the communications towers. We were unsuccessful in doing that, and there were a variety of reasons for that. And I think part of it is people can't reach a consensus on whether these things are good or not, but they're coming anyway. And when we use the cell phone as much as we use as computers and everything else, we're probably going to get additional towers. We're probably going to get them in additional locations. And I think it's just a fact of life, and it's just something we're going to have to deal with. I certainly am taking to heart about concerns that people have for these things, but I also think we have to do some of these things just for the good of the overall general public. And as a city, we do need the revenue. And so I think when we talk about city property being utilized, I think it's better than someone coming out and putting it in a residential area on private property, and then there's not a whole lot we can do about that. And so at least in this case, we have some control over that. We also receive some revenue from it, and I think the city will benefit ultimately from the players that utilize the tower, because they will provide additional resources to the city on an ongoing basis. At least that's been my experience with large corporations that do these types of things, is they will provide additional resources. So that's one of the reasons why I've been supportive of some of this. I'm not supportive of putting a tower on a residential street next to a house, but that's not next to a house. It's in an actual park, in the middle of a park, and it's a single pole tower. So I look at that as a little different. The one out, there's a lot of different types of towers that they utilize. It's not going to be decorated in any special way, but it's also, unless you really look for it, it's not going to be extremely visible. So I think there's a lot of pluses to that. I think there may be a few negatives, but I also think that it's something that we did in good faith here, and I would hope that people would see it that way. And so that's pretty much all I have to say. I hope we do answer the questions, and then we'll move forward from there.
Can you tell me, was another site even looked at for this? Like the landfill, something outside of a neighborhood like this?
We did not choose, we were not the part of choosing that site initially. I believe the company came to us and said, this is where we have a communication issue, and this is where we'd like to situate that tower, and I think they did a lot of research on that. I'm not sure there's any other position that I would feel more comfortable with in that area for that tower. Because it was a matter of the company coming to us and looking at that. We did not suggest alternatives, I don't believe, because they did not ask for any alternatives. And usually when a person's coming in, or a corporation, or when they're asked for a location, sometimes we're able to give them alternatives. In that situation, I'm not sure there was any, but they did not ask for any. And so we did not provide them with any. Sometimes when people come down, like DMV asked us for alternative sites, and we gave them to them, and then they chose others that were not really what we had really determined for them. So that happens also.
Well, I don't mean for the company itself. Of course, they're going to pick where they want it to be. I'm saying on behalf of the community, did you all consider other locations that might be more suitable.
I did not consider other locations because I was not a part of that discussion. I don't know what happened from the city
No, ma'am.
manager's side.
Vertical Bridge came to us saying there is a need and that this is the spot that's needed to provide service in that area. They've had multiple complaints of drop calls and what have you. I know you had mentioned the landfill, wasn't discussed with them, and I believe that's not even our property.
It's not, it's county property.
But this location was chosen for multiple reasons. Number one being that was the best service that they could provide, which is as you're aware, is a very expensive project to put up, and that they want a location that is going to work. And compared to other cell towers in the city of Brawley, which I've drove around and looked at and researched, this is actually, again, outside of the minimum limits and also a lot farther than some of the other towers within the city limits. But directly to your question, no, I did not propose any alternative sites.
Okay, and just to clarify, we do have someone whose house is right across the street from the tower here. And a
Understand.
whole street and neighborhood there. So-
Understand, but there is a buffer, because there is at least a baseball field, a parking lot, and some other structures in that area.
It's a small buffer for a tower of that size. All right, thank you.
Ma'am, if you would please forward me the questions
Yes, I
you
will.
have. Yeah,
I
thank
will.
you.
Thank you.
All right, thank you for that. I do need to add to the record that there was a letter sent, an email sent from Elizabeth Lorenzen, also opposing the installation of the cell tower. Sent in an email, so we can enter that in the record. I won't read it. Basically, along the same lines as what Nicole has stated tonight.
You want it back?
So, as it stands, I think Donnie put it the most concisely, which is that if there is, based on these questions that have been brought tonight, if there is some compelling argument or evidence that either we didn't follow proper procedure or there's some major obvious health concern, that's something that should be brought back to us that would alter the decision that's been made. But anyway, that's how we will leave it. We'll direct you to answer those questions and if there's anything compelling to get that to us as well. So thank you, each one of you that have come and been part of the process and made your voice heard. It's difficult to do that, I know, because everyone's got their schedules and their things that they need to do, and so we know you took time out of your schedule to come and make your voices heard. We appreciate that. As has been stated, I think each of us acted in good faith with the trust that's been given each one of us as council members here. We each have our own opinions on these types of projects, and ultimately we have to make the decision based on our opinions and the research that we've done. So thank you all for the robust discussion. These aren't always pleasant topics, but appreciate you going through the process.
Thank you all, including our mayor. Thank you for your leadership.
Okay, we will move on to item 6B, which is an update on the City of Brawley declaration of local emergency as a result of COVID-19 pandemic, an overall outlook presented by our Fire Chief, Mike York.
I appreciated that we hired Desi in the library. He is tall like me, so there's two of us breaking this now. Good evening, Mr. Mayor, members of the council and city staff. Fire Chief Mike York here for the COVID-19 update. To summarize briefly, we are in a very good position. Obviously, we still have people that are sick within our community. We still have people that are suffering long-term effects, and of course, we have had many members of our community pass. However, it is very important to focus on some of the positives. As of today, it was reported that there are only 52 active COVID-19 cases in Imperial County, and that's quite a milestone. That comes at a lot of hard work. It comes at a lot of personal sacrifice, as we all know, of social distancing and maybe not doing some of the things that we're used to, and of course the hard work of our healthcare professionals. Our blueprint for a safer economy, our current numbers are also extremely positive. Our current case count per 100,000 is 2.9. Only 3 people in our county per 100,000 are COVID positive.
Wow.
Our testing rate is 2.3%. And our health equity quartile, which is the difference between the normal public and our most underserved public, is 2.6. So right in line, less than 0.3% of our underserved population difference between our general population. At home at the Brawley Fire and EMS response, there's been no change since our last update. So our call volume regarding COVID specificity has fallen off.
Considerably, right? I mean,
Yeah.
at this point, yeah.
Yes, sir.
Yes.
So I think it's kind of anecdotal, but I'm hearing it from many different sources. It seems that although there are some people that are still grievously sick, it seems like those that are getting sick now are getting less sick. And I think our hospitalization numbers bear witness to that as well.
You know, I'll mention something. I think over the past like 13, 14 months, people, anytime they get sniffles or anything, they think it's COVID related, right? And I was, my allergy started acting up today, and so I took Claritin, but I not once thought it was COVID, so that's a good sign as well.
I think I think that's good that
Yeah.
people maybe we still obviously need to take precautions, and
Yeah.
if people who have not had COVID, or even if they've had the vaccine and are experiencing some illness that is serious or presenting, they should get tested still. But I believe your example is correct, where maybe we don't jump to that conclusion
Right.
immediately now.
Yeah, absolutely.
As for vaccination, 152,819 doses delivered in our county. It's a huge testament not only to the pipeline, the supply, but just all the avenues that have been. The county really, they really mobilized. We were provided training, so even our EMTs that normally don't provide invasive procedures were allowed to administer these vaccines, and they did so safely. And obviously, it's now fallen more on the clinical side. We've moved past the point where we need these emergency clinics, but they're out there, they're available. As of May 13th, they're available to anybody ages 12 and above. Here in Brawley, 8,692 persons fully vaccinated, with another 2,000, just shy of 2,000 people waiting for their second dose. So we're pretty close to having half of our population being fully vaccinated in our city, which is excellent news. If there's any questions regarding the COVID update, I would answer those now.
Chief, just very happy to hear those numbers. Just overwhelmed with joy to hear that people are actually getting vaccinated, because I have a couple of close friends that are refusing to. But I received a call from, I was going to save it for public comments, but maybe now's a good time to address it. I received a call from the mortuary that provided the services for my mother back in June, that there is a federal program for families that were affected through COVID, family death, that had expenses related to that because of COVID. There is aid for that, and they can recover some of those expenses. I don't know if we can provide that maybe on our website or on our Facebook. Just I'm sure you have access to that, and if not, I'll look it up. They gave me the information. I put it somewhere, and I'll text it to you.
Yeah, I was aware of that program for funeral services or burial and that kind of thing.
Yeah, I received a call from East County Mortuary, actually, and I very appreciated it. They called me personally to give me that information. So, yeah, it'd be great if we can get that information out. It's not much. I mean, it doesn't bring your loved ones back, but, you know, anything helps at this point. So,
If I recall correctly, I believe that there was a notification through the Imperial County Public Information Officer regarding that specific program, and I can look for it and make sure that we can share it or provide that information along our website if
we'll
approved.
share it as well. Thank you.
Mike?
Yes, sir.
Due to the declaration of emergency, when are you recommending that we remove that declaration? Next meeting? Or the governor's going to declare, well, there's talk that he's going to declare June the 15th as the opening of California back to some form of normalcy. I worry a couple things I'm worried about. Declaration, I think we're probably out of the emergency stage for the declaration almost at this point in time. However, I'm worried that it might affect our funding, and I'd like to know maybe what some other areas are contemplating or doing, and maybe for the next meeting, can we maybe put something on the agenda? Well, we have it on the agenda anyway, but maybe get ready for that discussion as to whether we want to remove that at that meeting or not. Because I think we've got to do that eventually. We can't just keep saying it's still an emergency, especially with our numbers where they're at. So I think that's something we need to talk about.
Yes, sir. Councilman Cashman, between last meeting and this one, we did actually ask our city attorney, Bill Smurden, to provide some guidance regarding specifically the 60-day renewal. And Bill found that California Government Code 8630 requires that we review the declaration of emergency every 60 days. It doesn't necessarily require a resolution. However, because kind of as a documentation, speaking with Ms. Salcido, we determined that we'll just continue with the resolutions every 60 days until determined by this body that the declaration of emergency is no longer necessary. Obviously, as we're reaching this June 15th date and a change to the overall outlook throughout the state, I think in terms of response to the emergency, you're very accurate in that we're nearing completion of that. However, there is going to be an ongoing continuation of an economic emergency. That's not my forte to answer. However, I think that we would probably as a city be best served by maintaining our declaration of emergency as long as the state does, unless we get some sort of relief in another form.
Okay.
Can we
That
keep the
makes
bulletproof glass there or no?
Well, I'm sure
I needed
Councilman
it.
Wharton appreciates
I
needed it.
Yeah,
feeling it's
it's,
the
if
no weather, no
I
precipitation.
appreciate it when I was there. I didn't want to catch a cold or anything. I'm good like that.
If I may, it's not as simple as just say, for the city to declare the emergency to cease. Again, it's tied to funding, and we got to make sure that we are
Okay.
doing our due diligence, that we're not going to shoot ourselves in the foot.
Preemptive,
Yeah.
and then we,
Correct.
yeah.
Yep.
uh-huh.
So
That's a good point.
that's mainly why Chief York and I and the city attorney had not amended this resolution before you for 60 days. In 60 days, we better know what's going on from the
Right.
state, so.
That's a good point.
And-
I'm
and
glad you mentioned that. Yeah.
My only concern is not, I think we could keep the declaration of emergency as long as we wish. My concern is we're going to have members of the public coming in saying, why do you still have it an emergency? Everything's okay. We don't have to wear a mask. We don't have to do this. We don't have to do
Well,
that.
maybe we
And
can
so-
limit the standard, but it's still an emergency.
Right.
Maybe
It's still
that,
an
you know,
emergency,
so-
or as you mentioned, an economic emergency.
Yeah, we're
And
still
maybe
not out
we
of
just
it.
continue with that.
And I think maybe pertinent to this briefing is also as of right now, we don't have solid ground regarding what June 15th means. We have some indications. One of the big things for an entity with employees, as well as for our local businesses, is that we have some indications of what the state guidelines mean for June 15th. We don't have anything definitive. However, Cal OSHA has not presented anything regarding the changes, and their initial date to review was July 31st.
Yes, there's
And I
some
believe
discussion.
that there is an emergency meeting this week by Cal OSHA to review that. So
Okay.
we have two different entities that are going to kind of dictate operations that we're still pending notice.
Right, and I do think they need to come together and reach some kind of tentative, date that they can all agree on. And I think that would be much better for everybody. But that doesn't necessarily mean that we take off the emergency declaration. As long as we have as many people not paying, not able to pay their utility bills, not able to meet their requirements, I think we keep it in place as long as we possibly can, with the thought in mind that we may eventually have to remove it down the road.
And I think it's a reasonable assumption that even after the June 15th date, regardless of state and Cal OSHA, that there's going to be some expectation for differences in services and products such as PPE or the
Yeah,
bulletproof
I
glass.
also don't want us to lose anything economically or PPE or any of that kind
And
of thing that
funding
we
may be
might
tied to
need.
those emergencies needs.
Okay, all right. I think the public just needs to know we're having these kinds of discussions.
Absolutely.
That's why I brought it up.
Just from a legal standpoint, I think that the challenge will come to Governor Newsom, not to not to Mayor Hamby. So I think the city council's.
The challenge, this guy.
He's ready for it.
I think throughout, the city council's been trying to support our residents as much as possible. I know my business, my wife's business is, you know, we managed to keep them open, and we wouldn't in other places.
Yeah.
Yeah, I do think we've been pretty successful at keeping most of our businesses still in business. I mean,
With that discussion, you do have in front of you tonight a resolution extending the declaration of emergency another 60 days.
Okay. Make a motion to approve the item?
Second.
It's been moved and seconded. All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed or abstentions? Okay.
Thank you,
That
Chief.
carries.
Thank you, Chief.
Item 6C, discussion and potential action to approve the memorandum of understanding between Imperial Valley Drug Coalition Law Enforcement Coordination Center and the City of Brawley, and authorize the police chief to execute the MOU. This will be presented by our police chief, Jimmy Duran. Backup is on pages 198 through 226.
Well, good evening again. Well, this MOU is rather simple and ongoing. I think if you've been in the council for a few years, you've probably seen it before. So, but I know some of you may have some questions still. So, just a brief discussion of what this MOU serves is to outline the parameters for participating in law enforcement agencies with the sharing and flow of information in what we call a high drug intensity trafficking area, also known as HIDTA. So really, this just regulates the multi-agency efforts. As you see on this report here, it outlines all the agencies. It's really all the police agencies here in Imperial County. It really talks about how to handle counter-narcotics, operational intelligence environments within the Imperial Valley Drug Coalition, which is also known as IVDC. And also any interactions within the Law Enforcement Coordination Center. So at this point, if anybody has any questions regarding this MOU.
I think you learn how many acronyms and whatnot are in law enforcement.
I had to read it over and over and over. It was like, wow, I didn't know those names existed.
Yeah, it goes beyond three-letter words.
it's just.
We certainly appreciate that being here.
It's a written.
You know, it's a huge concern for me, of course.
I don't think there's much cost involved.
Yep.
Yeah, no, go ahead.
Mr. Mayor, I was going to, unless there's any further discussion, make a motion to approve execution of this MOU.
I'll second that motion.
Been moved and seconded. All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed or abstentions?
I'll say it, Alma, I'll say it from here on. I'm starting to sound like George.
Resist commenting.
She said, who's second? And I was, I'm starting to sound like somebody up here.
Resist
more hair.
commenting.
Here's more hair than me.
Okay, item 6D, discussion and potential action to approve the agreement for the fiscal years 2019 Operation Stone Garden Grant Program in the City of Brawley, and authorize the police chief to execute the agreement. This is also presented by Police Chief Jimmy Duran. Backup is on pages 227 to 248.
Again, this is also a multi-agency agreement. As you see, most of the agencies are participating, and that's all the municipal agencies. And this is that Operation Stone Garden agreement that we call. And what it does is it really helps us increase law enforcement personnel in our designated areas of jurisdiction, meaning our own cities. Why? In order to combat some of the byproduct of the war on drugs. You know, what's happening here at the border really impacts our cities, and this really helps us do that. It just provides additional funding for that purpose and the region, and helps our sister agencies as well. So in a nutshell, that's pretty much what it is. Ongoing MOU, we do it every year. This one does provide funding, which we actually noted there. It's going to provide $237,000 roughly for fiscal year 2019. And as you may know, the federal government runs a little bit behind on these agreements. It's kind of weird, you know, because we're in 2021, but the first thing you may notice, like, wait a minute, why does it say 2019? That's the way it operates.
Okay.
Okay.
A motion to approve?
So moved.
Second.
Been moved and seconded. All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed or abstentions? Item carries. Item 6E, discussion and potential action to approve purchase of Motorola encryption upgrade in the amount of $323,995. utilizing American Rescue Plan funding. This is also presented by our police chief. Backup is on pages 249 to 281.
Okay, this is in reference to the purchase of radio encryption hardware, software, and any associated licensing for our public safety communications upgrade. And all this stems from the California Department of Justice, which, as you know, allows us to access the California Law Enforcement and the Telecommunications Center, or system, should I say. And this stems from a mandate, again, one of these other mandates that are being imposed on us. And unfortunately, it's a mandate without funding. And this is to protect confidentiality of information from the public. As you know, when we do our communications via our radio system, those communications can be easily intercepted nowadays. There's apps, there's different types of devices that can actually intercept that, and this is going to prevent that from happening. So again, the government is concerned for confidentiality of information, and that's in a nutshell what we're seeking for here. And luckily, the American Rescue Plan will fund this.
And you did mention it at a previous council meeting that this would be coming up, so.
Yes, yes.
So everybody take note, your scanner app won't work anymore.
Yep, no scanners now. You're going to disappoint a lot of people.
I make a motion to approve the item.
It's been moved. Is there a
Second.
second? Moved and seconded. All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed or abstentions?
Thank you.
Item carries.
Thank you.
Thank you, Chief. Item 6F, review and discuss the proposed utility user tax ballot measure language prior to placing on the required resolution for formal consideration.
Could we ever approve something that's less expensive, or is just everything?
No.
Everything's expensive.
Everything's expensive.
This item will be presented by our wonderful finance director and city treasurer, Carla Romero, and backup is on page 282.
Everything Carla brings is expensive.
Thank you again. Wasn't sure if we needed a little break before this, but it won't, hopefully. Just depends. We do have a couple people on Zoom, so I want to make sure that Fran and Laura can hear me and want to do a quick mic check with you.
Yes, good evening, Carla. Thank you.
Thank you. Perfect. So also with us today to answer any questions is our esteemed city attorney, Bill, and then our city manager, Tyler Salcido. So what we'll do is we'll give you a brief overview of where we left off our discussions the last time, and then we'll do a co-presentation with our subject matter experts from Avenue Insights and Analytics, which are joining us via Zoom. So if we could start the presentation. Thank you, Armando. So, there you go. Perfect, thank you. So we were last here discussing the utility user tax on April 6, 2021. That presentation is available online, and what we did during that presentation is that we reviewed the history of the utility user tax. We determined that a ballot measure should be placed on the special election, and we discussed the parameters of that particular ballot language and what it should entail. We concluded with that we did not want a sunset. We wanted the taxpayers or the voters to decide if and when the tax is repealed, and so that is how we formulated the proposed ballot language measure. We wanted to modernize the tax services that should be included within the utility user tax, and we had a general consensus to keep the rate at 4%. We did have some discussions to go up, and so we'll give you what the proposed ballot language gives you, some new potential revenue projections, and so we can finalize that and determine if we want to keep the rate at 4% tonight. We also outlined the next steps in the process at that particular meeting. And so what we'll do today is we'll go over what has happened since the April 6th meeting. We'll introduce to you Avenue Insights and Analytics, the staff that is joining us via Zoom. We'll review the proposed ballot measure results. That was a question that was posed to us, wanting to know what the previous ballot measure results were. We do have that information tonight. And we also wanted to review the proposed draft ballot language with you before we incorporate those into any resolutions that need to be adopted by the City Council. So a little bit more about what has happened since April 6th. We have identified that we have specialized consulting services available to the city. Avenue Insights and Analytics, I'll let them present themselves during the next slide and where their expertise brings to the table. The city manager, city attorney, and myself had had several meetings with the consultants that are joining us today, and then also some additional legal staff that is specialized in this particular subject matter. We have reviewed the draft ballot language with the consultants, and we've reviewed potential changes needed to the city ordinance as well, which is a conjunction. It's a two-step process, so you can't have one without the other. And so we've already started to look at those potential changes that we need to bring forth at the city ordinance that would match the ballot language measure as it's intended. And the reason to do that is because you want to have a reference document that says exactly and points to people exactly what it is that is going to be taxed, and that's what's incorporated within the actual ordinance. We've also had a verbal discussion, myself, with the county register of voters, indicating that it is our intent to put this on a special election in November. Again, we've also drafted informational content, as we discussed the last time. It is pending legal review to make sure that there is no persuasion, and it is just strictly educational and compliance, and will mirror any discussions tonight as well. We are intending to put that on the city's website, and then also potential bill insert. In the past, I have done what's called like a trifold or a budget summary. We could also include key points regarding the utility user tax measure on that. Again, very factual information, and we could include that as a bill insert comprehensively once the budget is adopted as well. So I will turn it over to Laura, I believe, to introduce themselves and a little bit about the Avenue Insights.
Well, good evening, everyone. I'm Laura Burnett. Happy to be joining you. I am joined by Fran Mencia, our Vice President of Government Relations, and Fran is going to be taking you through the ballot measure language, but I'll just introduce our company to you. We have been working with the City of Brawley for several years, and what we do is we provide your UUT compliance auditing services. We do the utility user tax audits to make sure that you are getting all the revenues that you are supposed to. We do payment reviews on all your utility bills to make sure that everyone's paying as they should. Fran is our legislative advocate. He makes sure that any legislation going on in the state of California that has to do with utility user tax is shared with the city staff and you as well. If necessary, if there is action that needs to be taken at the city level. And then, as we're talking about tonight, we do UUT ordinance implementation and election assistance, as well as technology reviews to talk about new technologies that should be added to ordinance as we are going to be discussing tonight. So with that, I will turn it back over to Paula.
Thank you, Laura. So the last time we met, we had a very astute question again by a council member that asked about, well, what have the past results been? So again, we contacted the County Register of Voters. Some of these, the 2011 and 2015, were on their website. The other two were not, but we were able to obtain the information. You could see here each one of the years the ballot measure was supported by the voters. By the last time, 62% was a yes vote. And so just wanted to bring back the different ballot measures, the different dates, and again, those election results, all indicating a support for the ballot measure.
If I may, Carla. The last election in November, you see is not on there, but if you will recall, I'm sure council does recall, council had pulled support for that language and ballot measure due to multiple reasons, but mainly due to COVID and what have you. It wasn't the right time. So that was somebody might ask why that's not on there. But again, that wasn't, council had changed, decided not to support it due to the pandemic. And it's also, I found it very interesting that with the exception of 98, after that it's increased the percentage. When the message is delivered correctly, you see results there. So
Thank you for that, appreciate it. So I'm going to turn it back over to Fran to talk to us a lot about just the details within the ballot language, how it was formulated, our thought process, and then also discuss the actual language itself, and then I'll end it with some of the next steps, and we're happy to answer any questions along the way.
Well, thank you, Mr. Mayor, members of the council, Carla and Tyler, for having us with you. As you can see on the screen, there's some key points that need to be considered when you look at ballot measures in the language. The current proposed ballot language was modeled after the original 1995 UUT ballot measure was put in place. So what we're really trying to do is make sure that we level the playing field and that it's fair and equitable for all citizens and businesses in particular that provide any type of telecommunications, phone, internet type of services. We estimate that modernization of your utility user tax ordinance will increase your revenues by approximately $600,000 in annual UUT revenues, bringing the total to about $2.5 million a year. And some of the differences are on the screen. You know, the 1995 version really was focused on landlines only. Certainly most people are using a cell phone or streaming, you know, or VoIP, other things that are not currently in your ordinance and being collected. Back then, internet was mostly dial-up, and your only option was cable TV to get entertainment in a video form. The revised ordinances would focus on not just on cell phones, in addition to landlines, of course, but most of those are really weaning back unless it's in a business, but also focus on internet, Wi-Fi, and satellite services. Fairness and love equity piece comes in where cable TV generally is taxed UUT locally, but a lot of times the internet, Wi-Fi, and satellite services are not collecting and remitting UUT revenue, so this really helps to level that out. The other thing is streaming, movie, and entertainment services will be captured under the revised modern ordinance that we've put in place. And just to back up for a moment, we've worked with 70% of the cities, 70% of the revenue of utility user tax cities in the state. There's 156 cities like yourselves that have a utility user tax in place. It's about $2.2 billion in revenue statewide. I personally helped work with over 50 of the jurisdictions to modernize their ordinances. So, and we've seen a lot of tweaks and differences. Everything has to be unique to your particular jurisdiction. But the common definitions that would be in place for yours would make sure it will capture the video streaming, internet, Wi-Fi, and also update everything around electric, gas, and those type of things to sync up with federal laws and rules that have gone in place since your last revision. So hope that's helpful.
So Fran, are you telling me that my Netflix is going to go up 4% a month?
I knew you were going to ask that. No, it was built into the price, but just by way of conversation, you know, we've been working with other cities, and these courts have ruled that they should be collecting and paying. Hopefully, it won't be going up 4%, but they acknowledge that this needs to be paid in, you know, most of these streaming companies, and it goes beyond just the streaming. It also would include Zoom meetings such as we're on right now. You know, they should really be remitting tax, Microsoft Teams, things of that nature. So hopefully your rate won't go up.
But that is a proposal. It's in the language, so in the event that it does in the future, it's actually taxed, then we'd be able to collect that. Is that correct?
That is correct, yes.
Thank you for the clarification.
Absolutely. And before you on the screen now is the draft ballot question. You know, beyond this is the title and summary that we recommend, and we've worked with staff, as mentioned earlier, Tyler and the city attorney, and Carla, of course, to put this together. But beyond this, there'll be revisions to your ordinance that reflect some of these things. So it follows closely to your previous ordinance. It clarifies that it's not to exceed the 4%. But upon the use of telecommunications services. So within that section, the telecommunications services portion, that's where you'll see those additional areas incorporated. And then again, updates to gas, water, sewer, and solid waste as well.
I guess we'll pause there and ask if there's any questions or concerns with some of the proposed ballot language on the screen.
I have a few concerns. One, indefinitely is a negative term, and they're going to view it that way. Is there another term that works better, or is there another way to word that? Or is it just better to leave it off? It doesn't have a sunset. I don't know if the other language said a date, or if it was.
Yeah.
Did it?
Yes, it has the others ballots had sunset dates, and this is why it's back before us today. And if I may backtrack a bit, back all the way back to the budget process, and I apologize for not bringing it up then, but it does expire in May of 2022, and that is not built into the budget.
Mm-hmm.
So, so it will, you know, if
going back to Mayor Pro Tem Couchman's comment with respect to the term indefinitely, is there something else that can be said? Like
Maybe,
no sunset or
Until-
in perpetuity or something?
Until repealed by voters.
Until repealed by voters might be better language. I mean, I think people view indefinitely, and they probably view that, I don't know how the voters view that. I view that as a little bit more negative than say, until repealed by voters.
Right,
because
it
then it's
puts
given the
power
power
back
to the
them,
voters.
certainly.
And I think that's important.
And
And
covers
even in
the
this kind of thing,
sunset
it's
issue.
always important that the power go back to the
Yeah,
voters.
right.
I think that's an important.
And it's clear,
matter.
right? Yeah. Maybe that's a better way to phrase that.
We can amend that.
I've got a real important question. Have we checked with the register? Are we within their word
Time
limit?
frame? I believe so, yes.
200 words.
200 words.
200 words.
Okay.
Okay.
Yes, yes, we are.
I have some other ones too.
There's nothing like finding out you're not when it's due.
Fran, this is George Nava. Any objection to what was discussed here with respect to changing indefinitely to something different?
No, certainly it's the discretion of the council and staff to do that. This was put in to keep it into perpetuity.
Okay.
So you can certainly define it any term that you like. I think your until repealed by voters should certainly work, and we'll run that by our legal team once more and confer with you, but I don't
Sounds
see an
good.
issue.
Yeah, that'll work fine. I do like the statement at a rated, which is less than many surrounding municipalities. And I do think in the educational process, we have to get out there. There's 150-plus cities that have these utility user taxes, and that's, I think, an important point to make for the voters, because I think in an educational world, that means that in an educated world, that will mean that they're aware that they're not alone in all this and paying this tax, and that it is a vital part of city budget. So telecommunications services is a good term to use, I think, because it's a very general term, and it covers a wide range of services. So there could be some additions in the future that we're not aware of, but it may fall within the telecommunications definition. So I think that works well there. I think police, fire, administration, they don't always look as favorably on, but police, fire, library, parks and rec, usually those are positive things for people to be aware of. Senior citizens care is certainly another positive. As regards the subject to future council action to reduce said percentage, I think right now the utility tax brings us about 1.8, 1.9 million, if I'm not mistaken. This is projected to bring us 2.5.
Administration, the word administration, you're saying, it may not be, maybe police, fire, city services, library and parks or something like that, something different.
Yeah, I think.
City operations?
I think people are not as feel good about city administration as
City
they are.
operations, though, because
You could
it
put
is,
city operations. I mean, we
I
know
hear
where
what
it's
you're
going to
saying.
go. It's general fund. It can be used for any of those services. The lion's share goes to police, a share goes to fire, and then a share goes to
You're
parks.
earning your pay today.
A
let me
very
put it that
small
way.
percentage goes to administration, but to some people, and not to me, administration can be a
Right.
negative term.
And
You think of Tyler when you think of
administration,
administration?
for clarification,
Yeah.
administration is like our city attorney, our city manager's office,
Yes.
finance.
Yes.
City operations.
Right.
But-
City clerk,
Yeah.
yes.
But I think you can make the issue for, those are important positions. People just view them sometimes as not being as important, or they don't even see their importance to the city.
Right.
The finance, though, I think they're becoming more aware because of what you guys have done with finance in terms of getting this stuff out there and getting those issues out there, like, say, the tax that we get off of property and sales and that kind of stuff. That kind of information is important because it shows the need for the utility user tax.
I think
So-
you're bringing up some good points, because quite frankly, the draft language is really, really important. It's really important because that's what they're going to be basing a decision on. And when you're in the voting booth, that's what you're reading. So it's like, you either, how many times I know I've done it where I'm like, nah, hell no, not to that, you know what I mean? It's like, it's really important what it says. So I do appreciate that you're bringing that up. so.
And this is going to bring in $600,000 more than what the other one did. Do we want to leave it at that? I think that's more of a topic for the council to discuss, not from me, but do we want to leave it at the 4% level? Do we want to adjust that accordingly? Do we want to leave the language in there that says future city council action to reduce said percentage? Because I can see us reducing this as we move along. The revenue from the tower that we're going to get, that could reduce the need for the utility tax. Other revenue sources can reduce the need for utility tax. Do we want to talk about that in this meeting regarding that 4%, or do we want to leave that for another date? Reducing it
old
might be a
appliances?
positive for getting it passed.
I mean, we
But-
don't, this does not give us the ability to increase it at any time in the future. It gives
No.
us the ability to decrease it. So,
Correct.
I mean, I'll leave it alone to where I want to see the rate, but I think if we stay at 4%, it's okay. Maybe now is not the time. But we could address it in the future and bring it down if we need to, but.
Does anybody on the council feel that 4% is a negative and it would be better passed if it was reduced?
You know, Sam, just the past research I've done, and I think Fran cited some of it, and maybe not, where we stand as a city of what portion or percentage of our general fund is dependent on that. I know it's a high number, but actually I believe we're kind of in the middle. There's cities that are, much more dependent, believe it or not. And, but also on the percentage, my understanding is we're kind of somewhere maybe toward the middle. I mean, I don't know if it's the exact median, but I know there's UUTs out there that are higher than the 4%, closer to 6% or 7%, right in that range. So anyways, I think the percentage and the public perception of that's been okay, and I think it's been lowered at least once, if not
We did
twice.
lower it, I think, once.
And I think right now, it's really just a matter of, especially with still the unknowns projecting out into the future, even with modernization, of what the exact number will be. These are projections, right? So they're best estimates.
Right.
But
They're best estimates. And
Yeah.
and maybe the percentage, and I had considered that as well previously, whether or not an increase in rate is maybe a better approach, so long as it can be explained to the public, right? But considering the fact that we are including other modernized technologies in the utility user tax, I think that might work well, and the projection is still strong. I'll just say this, though. Whatever it is, let's get it right, because it's going to be there for a while. And we know how critical the utility user tax is. The one thing, though, I would want to make sure is that the projections are accurate, everything we're doing is accurate, and we have to be careful, because we don't want to take the hard crack at this, make it, have it pass, and then it's not enough to support what we're trying to do.
I got that.
I mean, let's do it right if we're going to do it, and so anyway.
I think a couple of things, if I could just answer them. The ranges between other cities are anywhere from 1% to 11%.
11, okay.
So we're at 4.
We're on the low end.
I believe during the first study session, we also talked about it being 2.7 million at some point when it was originally adopted. So we're just kind of inching our way back up there, but not even all the way fully to where the city's revenue used to be at some point in time. You can always reduce it, just not increase it ever without voter approval again.
Carla, do we have any idea what the average household would pay in dollar terms?
I don't have that answer for you tonight, but.
we ran that calculation.
I have the
Thank you.
calculator, and I committed to doing
Thank
it and
you.
giving it to you, and I can get you that calculator. I
Thank
built
you.
it based on my own bill at the time. It was like $12 a month.
$12 a month, going back to 2017.
Yeah,
So,
uh-huh.
assuming some,
Yeah,
whatever
so-
indexing or whatever we want to consider, but
But we can take the
$12.
actual figures. I have a calculator. You put in your actual bills, and it'll calculate exactly what you're paying on a monthly basis. So it may be a little bit different with the newer services, but I'll find it and I'll get it to you.
Thank you.
And hopefully it's of some use.
And
I
it is
think it's clear
19.
we're all paying it, too. I think it's clear, everybody that lives in the city of Brawley is paying that. I'm paying on every one of those, and probably even more. And so it's just, it's a question of us, everybody has to pay. I mean, it's pretty much there.
Yeah, I just want people to be clear, because we know that the number isn't high, and we want people to understand that this comes directly to the city. That's
Right.
another misconception, that thinks it gets split up somehow.
It's not. It goes directly to fund operations within the
Correct.
city that you live in. So-
Correct, so I just want to let people know, if it's
Very
$20 a month,
important.
this is what you're contributing to your city.
100% of it.
100% of it. So, I mean, that's a good selling point.
Yeah, I think it's fair, and if it's a lot, then, we have,
Hey, it is what it is.
Yeah.
You can always reduce your usage if you wish to pay less.
And
Yeah,
quite
it's
frankly,
true.
industry is going to pay more, because
Yes.
they use, greater utility, there's greater everything, but.
The normal household does not
The
pay a
normal
lot.
household, it was, it's not, it is still something, but it's not a huge
It's
amount of
something, yeah.
money, so it's, it puts it into perspective, you know what you're paying more or less, to help support your community, right? So.
Right, and it's also fair. There was an argument of low-income folks not being able to pay it, but, you know, obviously those who have less services and less income are going to pay much less than those who are using more services. So,
Correct.
I mean, I think it's fair.
We
Flat
always-
rate across the board.
And we look at those things.
I think we always have to remember, too, that it's not overnight, right? There's an educational component, there's a process, us communicating. I think Fran and Laura can probably speak to this better than I can, but we'll have to reach out to those new services should the ballot measure pass in November, and then be able to educate and have them start remitting. And
Not
so
gonna happen immediately.
It's not going to
You're
happen
right.
immediately, yes. That 2.5, we hope to get there in maybe year 2 before we fully recuperate all of those, and then having to kind of do audits and education and all of those components.
Okay, sounds good. I think, well, I don't know, if everybody else might have
The
input
other,
for the language.
Yeah, with that change to the word indefinitely, also, if we're running up against a word account issue, after the 4%, it says a rate at which is less. I think that word "at" is not needed there. It could just be a rate which is less.
got it. Thank you.
Not to be all grammarly or
Yes.
whatever, but
Well, you just saved us one word.
one word.
You just a character.
I discovered when I was campaigning for city council that when you put your candidate statement in, you don't
You
get to
left your name
say
out?
you don't get to say everything you want to say because
No,
you
not
have a
enough
very
words.
Did
very
you leave your
short
name out or
word
no?
count. No, I had my name in there. Had to keep it short and
Luke,
sweet.
you just said Luke.
Yeah.
Yeah.
El Luke.
El Luke.
When you're that famous, you can go by one
That's
one
right.
name.
Yeah, right.
It's a
The
good.
council member formerly known as Luke.
You just put a symbol.
Yeah.
Right?
All right, this is getting out of hand.
I know.
Okay, is there any
Gets control of this.
any other discussion, or you just the direction is that?
I think I got it. See if we can replace that word indefinitely with until repealed by the voters. See if we can find a better word or a different word, alternative word for administration, such as city operations. And then if needed, or we should get rid of the word at after a rate.
Yes.
Administrative services.
Carla,
Yeah, she mentioned
Oh,
that.
yeah.
Carla, timeline, it is the council's wish that we correct language and bring it back to you, or did you provide enough direct? What's the timeline look like as far as?
So I think we can incorporate that language as proposed into the resolutions and bring them back at the next city council meeting. That was our goal, to be able to bring back the 3 required resolutions, giving us enough time before the August deadline. If for some reason the resolutions at that meeting, you're not 100% confident with them, we can hold them and bring them back at the next meeting.
Okay.
But giving you the actual language in that resolution format may prompt other questions, and we're happy to come back again. I don't want you to feel pressured that you have to make a decision at that meeting, but we do want to get those in front of you as quickly as possible. And then from there, in July, we would turn in all the required documentation to the county. We could again pass those the first meeting in July and then give them shortly thereafter to the county. And at the same time, simultaneously work on that continued outreach and education. Now that we're reopening our facilities and other people are having meetings as well, kind of reaching out to them, seeing how we can get on their calendar.
Right.
We really need to work on updating the city ordinance based on the proposed language, and then bring that back to you during some study sessions as well. We're hoping to do that in July, and then we go dark usually in August, and so then in September, bring back any edits to those proposed ordinance as well, so that as that educational component get closer to the special election date in November, we have some actual language that we can reference and provide the community that outlines what the ballot language means, how it will be adopted, how it will be incorporated into the utility user tax.
Great.
If that works for you,
Yeah.
we can do
That's
that.
good. That
Okay,
works.
perfect.
Perfect.
Thank you, Carla. Thank you, Fran. Thank you,
Great,
Laura.
thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Oh, fire.
It's
Here we
daytime
go.
wherever
This is
Laura's
a good
in.
one. This will make us a lot of enemies.
All right, moving on to item 6G, adopt first reading of ordinance number 2021- ordinance of the City Council of the City of Brawley, California, amending Chapter 19H of the Brawley Municipal Code concerning the use and possession of fireworks. This is presented by our City Attorney, Bill Smurden, and backup is on pages 283 to 288.
So, thank you, Mr. Mayor. Some time ago, Councilmember Couchman suggested that we toughen up our fireworks ordinance. And we did some research and found out some cities in the Bay Area have turned to the social host concept to try to curtail illegal fireworks. And you're probably familiar with it. The social host is the concept where if you're hosting a party at your home and you're allowing minors to drink alcohol and they get in trouble, well, you're in trouble too. And that's what some of the cities in the Bay Area have done with fireworks. They've also imposed pretty stiff administrative penalties, not criminal penalties. It's pretty tough to get a stiff criminal penalty because it's typically an infraction. But what this ordinance would do is impose some really stiff administrative penalties if you're caught violating. And the idea here with the social host is any police officer who's worked 4th of July can tell you it's virtually impossible to catch somebody. I used to go with Calipat every year, and we've got one person on all those years, and the poor kid is standing in the street holding a Roman candle. But we would run around all night trying to witness somebody do something. We knew where the fireworks were coming from, but you have to see somebody do it. The idea of the social host is if you know where it's coming from, you knock on the door and say, "Who's in charge here?" Well, you're in a lot of trouble now.
And here's
so we're hoping that this will curtail it. The other thing that's important to note is because we're so close to the 4th of July holiday that I've put language in this ordinance that would make it an urgency ordinance, meaning it would take effect immediately upon passage of its second reading, which we hope will be at your next meeting in June. For that to work, it would have to pass by 4/5. I don't think that's going to be a big issue, but it can't be a 3-2.
I have a few questions and a serious concern with this. First, I mean, I understand the concern. I understand the complaints for the public. When you say social host and when we're looking at where these fireworks are coming from, I live in tract housing on a cul-de-sac. I see the neighbors. The neighborhoods are, we burn our legal fireworks on the street, then we clean up after. If it happens in a public area such as a street or sidewalk, I mean, what tells me, you know, that a bad call made by a police officer comes and knocks on my door and now I'm fined. And we've seen this happen. It's not criticizing anybody. It's it's human nature. We all make errors. But I wanted to be very specific to say exactly what social host means, because somebody burning fireworks on the street in front of my house should not make me liable, ever. So I really want clarification on that, because especially because of where we live. And we see this, it looks like Disneyland, right? And it looks like
Yeah, we got it.
And I enjoy it, but I understand the issues and the concerns that come with that. But I think I need real clarification on this, because I'm afraid that the wrong person will get caught up and fined. And then how do we remedy that problem? Without proof, without, with somebody seeing it do it? Does it come from the yard? Does it come from the house? Need a lot of clarification, I think.
So the social host would be defined as a person, it's defined in there, as a person who's in charge of real property where illegal fireworks are being used, not out in front of the street. And as far as what happens if there's a dispute, we have in place in the Brawley Municipal Code a system where people can appeal administrative citations. So that appellate process would be in place. The other thing that you can never forget is the discretion of the police officer who's out there. I've seen it, and I know Chief knows police officers aren't necessarily interested in hammering people for the first offense, but they want to be able to say, you knock it off or things are going to be, I have ways to deal with this.
Mm-hmm.
I've been, myself, when Brawley didn't even allow the safe and sane, I've been contacted by the police, like, what are you doing? And, oh, sorry. it's stopped. But the social host is clearly defined. It has to be coming from the property. It can't, out in the street, that doesn't count.
Yeah, but again, areas that are congested, like tract housing that I live on, who determines that? And again, is it going to have to come from my backyard? Does he have to see it? This is too vague for me, and it gives too much power to one individual to make that decision. And we're talking about stiff penalties, and I'm serious. I see this happen, and I can't tell where it's coming from one street over. And I know, I can see it. I know it's one street over. I would rather put this off, honestly, until we are able to go through this drone program, because I think that will solve a lot of the issues. And rushing it now before the 4th of July won't do anything. I think if anything, it will hurt our community. It's too much power, where it's hard to determine exactly where it's coming from, and placing it on one individual. Honestly, I think it would lead to just harassment of a lot of our citizens here in our community.
I'll respond.
It's too vague.
I disagree. I think we have a major illegal fireworks problem out there in our community, and I believe any way that we can utilize to reduce that amount of illegal fireworks being produced out there is okay with me. I see this as being, if a person gets cited incorrectly, they can come forward and bring an appeal, and that's the way it'll be. I think you'll caution the police officers about street fireworks, and a lot of people are lighting the safe and sanes in the street, whether that's legal or not. I think we all kind of let that go by. I think I've done it in my driveway, in front of the house and everything. I've never been stopped by a police officer for lighting those safe and sane fireworks in front of my house, or even lighting them on the curbside out there, and we clean up after everything. However, we have a major intensive problem 2 weeks prior to the holiday and 2 weeks after the holidays here in Brawley. And if this will stop some of that, I think it's an appropriate ordinance. If people are lighting them in front of your house, I think it's up to you as the homeowner to go out there and tell them, cut it out.
But they have that option
Stop
now.
it.
They
Stop
have
it.
that option.
Well, I think if this starts being an issue, they will do it more frequently. I also think we have an option where people complain about the fireworks, but they won't do anything about them because they won't identify any individual. However, I do know that more people are more apt to identify an address than they are an individual lighting, because they won't see them light them in the backyard. But they know, the neighbors know that neighbor's lighting the fireworks. So you call the police, you give them the address. If the police drive by and see that occurring, they're going to go and cite that social host. And I worry about social host as a definition. What my idea is that we would identify addresses where this was occurring, and we would write them a ticket based upon that. Not so much what's happening out there in the open street, because I think a lot of people may light them out there, but a lot of people are lighting them in their backyard. And my hope was that would eliminate that problem. My other hope was that people would report it more frequently, because then we can get police out there. My other hope was that it will stop. The actual holiday doesn't necessarily bother me as much as the 2 weeks before and the 2 weeks after. I want that to cease. I think the drone will be a good thing, but that's not in place. But I kind of talk to people, and they keep saying, why don't you do something? Why don't you do something here at the city council? And we do. We have ordinances in place. But this strengthens that ordinance quite a bit. And I think it will have at least a small effect on dampening that activity, especially if you get fined $5,000. It's gonna really have an impact. It's not really a fine, it's an administrative fee, I think, kind of like a fine, but it's not considered to be necessarily a crime. So in that sense, I think you're still going to have some problems with fireworks, but I think this might reduce it by 50%. And if it can reduce it by 50%, I think we need to do that right now for the public at large, because I think they've been demanding it from us for years, and we really haven't done it. I agree that there may be some discretion, and we may run into some problems with it, but I think we need to put it in place immediately, and then if we do have problems with it, we can change it as we move along.
If I can just add, Mayor Pro Tem Couchman, I clearly read, at least in the ordinance before us, that the officer still does have to witness the illegal firework being discharged somewhere off of the property.
Yes.
That's the key to this. We don't have that today. So to be able to have that officer empowered with an ordinance to make that contact, I do agree with our city attorney that doesn't mean that they always automatic. There's always officer discretion. But the key here is The way the current ordinance is, if you don't witness a specific person discharging an illegal fire, you are effectively ineffective.
Yes.
And that's the problem. So I think strengthening this is a great proposal in and of. Now, to me, prevention is, if I were a homeowner or I were a, quote, social host, and say, not on my property.
Yes,
You're not doing that.
absolutely.
And go do it somewhere else. So,
And landlords will tell that to their tenants.
might that be a mitigator? And then I think on a case-by-case basis, with all respect, Councilmember Castro, that if there's, someone's wrongfully, being pursued, I think not only is there a process for that, but intent or not, we have a significant nuisance that is causing serious degradation of quality of life during a certain period of time, including, don't forget, the New Year's holidays and other holidays and World Series and sporting events. And we can go on and on.
The football games.
I think we really have to. And the only comment I'll make is, as a drone pilot myself, Part 107 certified, and someone that knows some, drones by nature, we do not have drones, or we're not purchasing drones that can stay up in the air, out of line of sight for a long enough period of time to do adequate patrolling and locate stuff like this. It's a great intent. I think there will be an application. There's a lot it can do, but it's not necessarily the solution per se to, a problem like this.
I agree with that. I don't know that the technology's there yet. But I just think if you say you're going to use those drones, though, to cease this activity, I think that has an impact on the public too, because they feel that, there's going to be a lot of enforcement. And so the more
it's an
enforcement
additive,
that you
no
have,
question. Yeah,
probably
it's
the
an
more-
additive. Yeah.
And the only thing that I would say is if we pass this, I believe that the pets in the community and the veterans that suffer from PTSD and the older people in the community, the aged in our community would be very thankful for us to have this passed. I don't think we necessarily have a fire problem with the fireworks. I don't think we necessarily have any of that. We have had some fires, but I do think the noise and the constant firing of these things and the constant until after 2 or 3 o'clock in the morning, I think it affects people's livelihood and their lives, and I think we got to do something about it. And we need to do it
I had one
immediately.
fly into my backyard and explode, and it was like, it just, not only did it wake us up, I mean, it was a explosion, right? It wasn't small. And so, I mean, that was potential fire, and I was upset,
I see them all over. I travel around in my car looking to see if I can catch them, but it doesn't seem to be very easy to do. So, I mean, that's another issue.
I don't disagree that there is a problem. I'm just saying that this is probably not the best way to do it, in my opinion. Because I have seen the interactions here in our city.
I'm open to other solutions too. I mean, I'm open to anything anybody has any ideas on. I haven't seen any way to really resolve it other than to get very, very tough with the public.
Yeah, and I think that what it comes down to is that what we've tried this far has not really worked, and so we just have to.
I would say this, and I hear your concerns, Councilmember Castro. We can move forward with the ordinance if you will consider that, and give it time for adoption. Let's evaluate it to see how it's applied, and then see if we can maybe revisit that. Because I agree with you, it's not a perfect solution. It's not, right? But it's just a way for us, because we have, over the course of time, many years, been faced with not just the fact that we have had fires, but a lot of complaints from the public with respect to, just the extent of illegal fireworks and how long they're going on, and before 4th of July, after 4th of July, and other times of the year. So if you would give it some consideration, just so we have consensus on council, and I realize that you're not fully in favor, I'm not either, right? I agree with you. It's not as clear as it could be. But just give it some consideration so we can evaluate it and see, because I certainly think it's better than what we have currently, right? And that would be my comment. I agree with you, though. I think it needs some fine tuning and refinement, but I think it is better than what we currently have in place.
Mr. Mayor, I do have one. I think it needs to really address illegal fireworks, though. I'm afraid that when we get into the area of
It does say that.
Of safe, yeah, but in some of it,
It just says possession of
It just says
fireworks.
possession of fireworks, and I think it should say possession of illegal fireworks. It preface each illegal fireworks, because we do have safe and sane fireworks out there that are legal, and I don't want us to get confused. I don't want the public to be confused and start reporting people that are lighting little cones out in the street and stuff to the police department, because that confuses the officers and it confuses the public, and so if it says illegal, though, I think we'll be covered.
Probably part of that problem is that this is being added to quite a lengthy
Fireworks thing already.
ordinance that we already have, but.
And it talks about safe and sane in that ordinance?
Yeah,
Okay,
but
maybe we're covered.
We can tweak it up a little bit for the second reading, for sure.
Okay.
Okay, so do we need to take a vote to adopt the first reading? Okay.
Yes.
Is there a motion to adopt this first reading?
I'll make the motion to adopt the first reading.
Is there a second?
I'll respectfully make the second, and then there's certainly not any.
No, I understand. I understand where everyone's
Yeah.
coming from. Again, I hope you guys understand my
Yeah,
concern.
I certainly do. I make the second on the motion.
Okay, it's been moved and seconded. All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed or abstentions?
Aye.
Okay. All right. 4-1. Move on.
Is that what is required for it to?
Yes.
Yep.
That's fine.
And no disrespect.
Yeah, just, if you go to my neighborhood,
I know.
see how easy it's gonna be to mistake.
I know.
Yeah.
I know what you mean.
But you haven't been here for the last 11 years listening to the
No,
comments.
I'm aware of the issues. I'm not arguing that. My concern is that you really do see like.
I know
One
that,
street
I know
over,
the situation.
Full Disneyland. shop.
I've driven down them, I know.
But maybe
I know.
the fact that it's in place, right? And being proactive in addressing that and messaging will.
Be a deterrent.
Yeah, be a deterrent.
Yeah,
You see what I'm
that's a
saying?
decrease
And I
Hoping
hope
this
that that
part
is
of
the
the people
case,
don't
right?
do it.
And we don't.
That's all I want.
So it's like, you know what I mean?
Well, let's hope so.
Let's hope so.
hope
Let's
that
stay
I'm wrong.
positive.
It does put a burden
Let's
on
stay
the police
positive
department.
and let's hope for the best there, right?
I'll be positive.
Right?
Just like I
Let's
said, I
stay-
understand the problem. Just it scares me. It
I
scares me.
understand, and,
Okay.
yeah,
I understand that.
let's be united in being positive, I would say.
All right.
Because if my kid comes over there, I'm gonna have to stop him from lighting anything that's weird.
All right, item 7, informational item. 7A is a record of building permits for April 2021 in the city of Brawley, prepared by Oscar Escalante, our interim building official. It's on pages 289 to 291.
I will make a comment on this. I mentioned this report today to the Board of Realtors. I had a meeting with them as in the Government Affairs Committee, and they likely will be coming to the city of Brawley at some point, and then other cities, to talk about development, how important it is. But, you know, it's funny, because they said, you know, they want to be able to approach developers and let them know, like, some of the advantages of working in different cities, right? And so they said, well, you know, how do we know which contractors are working where? And I said, oh, you know, we have a report within our city, and I'm sure it's easy to query in other cities to show what type of improvements are being made. So I referenced this report in particular, and you know, talking about, you know, like, for example, new house construction and who the builder is, who the owner is, et cetera. So you know, those are the things I think that are important to groups like the Board of Realtors, and this information is valuable to them. So anyway, just wanted to share that. Thank you.
Item 7B, monthly staff report for June 2021, presented by Shirley Bonias, our Personnel and Risk Management Administrator, on page 292.
Good evening, Mayor, Council Members. Shirley Bonias, Personnel and Risk Management. Page 292 is your monthly staffing report. I'm happy to say we swore in a dispatcher, public safety dispatcher today.
Right.
Yay. Only down one again. Hopefully, this gentleman comes from the Sheriff's Department, so he has some law enforcement experience. So hopefully this one will be a keeper, and we'll move on. Also hired a lifeguard today and the senior center coordinator today. So it was
Very
a busy
cool.
day in the hiring.
Yeah.
Getting ready for the library to open as well. We have posted those positions. We have one returning person from the layoffs. Everybody else will not be returning. But moving forward with recruitments, and it looks like we have a lot of interest out there.
Okay.
Any questions, I'll be happy to answer. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you, Shirley.
Thank you, Shirley.
Moving on to item 8, City Council member reports. not to exceed, no, never mind.
4 minutes.
We'll start with Councilman Wharton.
I'll try to be succinct. Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Since the pool has opened for lap swim, I have been partaking in that activity, and great to see the members of the public out there participating. So big thank you to our parks manager and the Parks and Rec staff, Linda and all. Very well done, and the new staff there, Shirley, as you mentioned, are doing a great job, seems like. So happy to see that happening. And then just want to also just throw out a congrats. I know it's, graduation season, and those are, those celebrations are taking place in that milestone. So to all the Brawley graduates, big congratulations. And not to mention probably one of the toughest classes that will be, go down in the annals of history, right, with the pandemic. But also very much enjoys driving down Legion Road with that third phase complete, other than I think the striping. So Guillermo, certainly Public Works and our whole department there. That's been it's been years really since we've been talking about the project, but just to see it in the phase that it's in now, it is literally like driving as well as riding bicycles are like butter. So thank you very much. Well done. And then lastly, as far as an event, it was a very welcome event. I appreciate the invitation to my fellow council member here to the American Legion. Really enjoyed attending that event of the patio opening. So I will not steal thunder because I know that is yours, but I will make mention that I'm now one of the newest members of Post 60. So
yes.
Thank you.
Very nice.
That's my report.
All right, thank you, Donnie. Councilman Castro.
Yes, how happy the Legionnaires were that they now have 2 council members as Legionnaires? That's a big deal. We're just waiting for a police chief to join, a certain police chief to be a Legionnaire. That would be like almost a trifecta, right? We did miss you, Chief. We were hoping you would get there with your brother, and it's too bad you couldn't attend. And you as well. It's too bad. I get it. But you know what? It was very well attended. I apologize to Councilman Nava because I pointed him out as so. I was a little distracted, right? And I kind of poked some fun at Councilmember Nava, and
because I'm bald, huh?
afterwards, afterwards he went and picked on me a little bit too. So it was all good, but it was a great event. Well attended, and I was just happy to see that we're getting to a little bit of normalcy. Councilman, we were all there, as a matter of fact. And for the record, we all stayed away from each other. So that was part of my speech. And it was just fantastic. I was very happy to see this come about. We put a lot of work into that place, hundreds of hours of volunteer manpower, and then the donations given by the Santillan family. It was just great. And that's a place for the community to use. It's a place for the city anytime you guys want to use it. It's at your disposal. Just, let whoever's running it know. But it was a fantastic weekend overall. On Saturday, I attended, I forget the name of the high school, but Montgomery High School in San Diego to watch the wrestling team. My son is a freshman and was invited to CIF. So it was really cool. The streak was broken at 20 years, but if you would have seen how many underclassmen were on that wrestling team, and the disadvantage that our team was at, that they had a month ahead of us, a month more of training than our Brawley boys, you would be very proud of them. They did very well. They're tough. They're tough. I didn't realize how tough these kids are, and watching them fight, I mean, it was just great. I'm very proud of my son as a freshman, again, invited to CIF. And I guarantee you that this fall, when they come back, they will bring that CIF title home. They're just a bunch of tough guys. Very proud of them. And then last but not least, and I feel like I saw a lot of you guys this weekend, and I appreciate that, it was the Veterans Day walk from Westmoreland to Brawley. And then we had the opportunity again to speak at the cemetery and remember our fallen, our service members who are no longer here with us. So, and I appreciate the support from everyone here. It means a lot to us veterans. It means a lot to the families of those who are no longer here. And you guys heard the comments up there from the folks whose brothers and fathers and uncles didn't come back from combat. How much this means to them and how much it means to us as a nation. So I appreciate that. I appreciate all of your support. That's all I got, sir.
Thank you. Councilman Nava?
I'll keep it somewhat brief here. Also would like to thank Councilmember Castro for his invitation to the American Legion ribbon cutting. Beautiful event. It was great to see people without their masks on. And, you know, not everybody.
Yeah,
I'm
some
kidding.
of us.
But, right. But great event, even if you picked on me for a little bit, you know. And so,
I apologize, I think.
you know, but that's okay. It really was a great event. It's good to see everybody out there, and I think we enjoyed ourselves. And it's a great improvement to the facility, too. So congratulations on your participation in that as well. It's a very, very nice improvement. It's near my office, and I can tell you it's an improvement to the block, and I hope that continues. It helps build a nicer block for us and makes it a nice area for us, so thank you for that. Also attended the ICTC budget workshop for the Imperial County Transportation Commission, and also represented you all on the ICTC meeting. Attended the virtual league, the California League virtual meeting as well, and it's simply just not the same, you know. And so,
it isn't.
But my understanding is we're going to have an in-person exposition this year, so I'm excited. I'm really excited about that's honestly one of my best events. The SCAG event's also a good one, but that's really where we make a lot of connections and contacts, and I'm looking forward to it. And then for our newest council member, I think it's a good opportunity for you to really learn from others and meet some people. So it's going to be a good event for you as well. Did want to thank the Imperial County Transportation Commission and IV Transit for assisting me to assist
Which is really cool, by the way.
Memorial Walk. And so they provided transportation on a day they're not normally working, and we're able to transport a large group of walkers all the way to Westmoreland. And it's always just very much appreciated because, you know, when you think about it, you know, how are people are going to drive there or get dropped off and that kind of thing. It just makes it convenient, and quite honestly, they like doing it, and you know, we try to provide them recognition for their assistance, and I do appreciate them very much. So thank ICTC and thank IV Transit for their assistance. And I participated in the walk. It was a good walk, and you know, it's very enjoyable. I got to meet some new people that I didn't know previously. One is actually a son of a city employee, and he had a very, very great story to tell. And so I got to make a new friend on the way, and heard some good, you know, just stories about life and everything else. So it was a good experience for me. I appreciate it. It's an honor, as always. And you know, we also got to speak over at the cemetery, and I appreciate the opportunity to share, you know, some comments briefly. But just proud and honored to walk alongside you and you know, everybody else. And so thank you for that. And those are my comments. So thank you all very much. I do appreciate everybody's patience, and you know, I know sometimes in meetings it gets a little contentious. So you know, it's just, you know, part of the show. And my apologies if my personality sometimes it comes off as strong, but you know, I certainly will defend our city, our council, and our decisions, especially when I feel like we're making the right ones. So thank you all very much.
All right. Mayor Pro Tem Couchman.
Yes. I had the privilege of, the city decided that with the senior drive-by, the senior graduating class was going to do a drive-by here in Brawley, and so the city decided they would do something for them, you know, because those seniors have really had a rough year. And so I think it was very vital that we came out and did something for them. I want to commend Alma and Lorena, Miguel from Parks and Rec, Lorena's family, and Alma's family for being here. And they did some decorations, and Carla's staff and Carla were across the street, so we had a little bit of a competition there. We won, but we had a little competition, and we were able to welcome those seniors and cheer for them as they came down past here, past City Hall. And there were other people on the street, and I think it was a pretty good turnout. I think there were a lot of people that wished them well on that drive-by, and I think they enjoyed it. And that way, we certainly enjoyed it. We had a lot of fun, except it was windy, and everything kept blowing away, and we were having some problems with the wind. But other than that, I think it was really good, and we do wish those seniors well in their future endeavors. They've struggled through this year, and hopefully this next senior class will have a better time of it going through high school and graduating. But they did graduate, they are successful, and hopefully they'll go forward with that success. American Legion, I did that. I attended the ceremony at the American Legion patio, the pavilion, and it was a very nice ceremony. The food was excellent. this getting to see people is so different when you come out of COVID, and it's really very uplifting to see many people that you had not seen in about a year. And so, and just going into the American Legion and talking to the people and having some input and one-on-one and eating dinner together without masks was kind of it's kind of eye-opening how much that means to a lot of people. And to me, it was very important. I did have dinner with former Councilman Norma, and her husband, and talked to quite a few people. Got to see people from my senior class in high school, and it was a really nice event, and everybody did very well with it. And I thought it was good recognition for the veterans that went through Vietnam, which was an honor for them. And the pavilion was named for Katie Santillon's relatives, her husband and her brother. And that was some really great stories there. And then the next, I went out to the cemetery. I did follow them in my truck on the walk, waving at them and laughing. But they did do the walk, and they came out to the cemetery, and we had a really neat gathering out there, and there were a lot more people because they didn't really, I don't think they really planned for that, but there were a lot of people out there, and we had a really great time with that, and a lot of people, and the people gathering again, and it was a really neat ceremony, and quite a few Brawley residents were out there, and next year I'm sure it'll be even bigger. And then you have a new changeover of officers at the American Legion, and I think that's going to be, I think the officers did a great job this year. I think they're going to do, the new ones will do a great job next year. And then I came down to the Veterans Wall at 3 p.m. for Sal Ortiz to play taps here at our Veterans Wall. And we had a group of people that came to that. And at 3 p.m., bugles across America, at 3 p.m. everywhere across the nation, they played the bugle. And they played taps, and it's a very moving song and a very moving piece of music, and it's real reflective of our emotions at this time for Memorial Day. And so we did that, and also I attended the virtual League of Cities meeting, and that meeting needs to be in person. Not to take away from that meeting, but Zoom just doesn't make it, as Councilmember George Nava indicated. The in-person makes a big difference there, because there's a lot of networking that occurs at that meeting, and that doesn't happen by Zoom, really. And so hopefully we can get back to normal with that, and some of my Rotary meetings need to get back to an in-person meeting also. With that, that's all I have to say.
Thank you, Sam. Well, I'll keep mine short. I also attended that virtual League of California Cities meeting, and something that struck me is that the brag time that the mayor has to, update the rest of the city councils on all the projects ongoing in our city, I have to really cut that way back because it's a 5-minute time limit, and people start texting me if I go, anywhere close to that 5-minute limit. But I get so much, so many topics and items from different departments that it really is astounding to see, what all is going on in the city of Brawley. And it's, again, it's just, it kind of goes along with this added encouragement and confidence in what's happening within our different departments, what's happening with our department heads coming out of COVID. Like, I just feel like we're in a much better position now than we were going into COVID. So I'm very grateful for that. I also attended the American Legion event that Ramon invited us to, and I appreciate that. Very good steaks there. And I got to say a few words at the Memorial Day event at the cemetery on Monday, and that's special to me to be there. I love that cemetery, and it's just that event has a lot of reverence to it, and I think every one of us there, because we're there, we appreciate what has happened, the people that have laid down their lives for us to have the freedom that we do. I attended a special library board meeting in which we onboarded our new library manager, Desi Rodriguez, and figured out a reopening plan for the library. So I think better times are ahead of us even yet. So Donnie has said to me a couple times, hey, we're setting you up to have a really good year as mayor, and the fact is, I can't take credit for any of the wonderful things that are happening here this year. But as with any other figurehead, it's like you have to bear the brunt of the bad, and you get some of the credit for the good. So I'm thankful for my fellow council members and all the hardworking city staff and administration that happens here, because it really is, it's feeling good this year. So 6 months into this position as mayor, and I don't want to jinx it, but it just seems like, our trajectory is upward, so. That does it for my report. We have item 9, the city attorney report.
So I went to the last Friday of the City Attorneys League of Cities Conference, and it was by Zoom too, so it's not much fun.
Attorneys on Zoom.
Attorneys on Zoom? I can't see why it's not so much fun.
Can you imagine?
Yeah, right?
And then this-
Almost as fun as
The
finance
licensing
on
agreement,
Zoom.
when you click on it, you're reading it, and you're like, yeah, that's not right. Yeah.
This Friday, I have the League of Cities Appellate Advocacy Committee meeting, also on Zoom, so that won't be much fun either, but.
Well, it's opening up soon, so I
Yeah.
think in person will be.
But at least, the league's carrying on, and that's
Yeah.
important. But other than that, the city staff's keeping really busy. There's a lot of projects coming, a lot more ordinances coming, and hopefully they'll make some improvements.
Good, very good. Gordon asked if anybody on your Zoom meeting had a cat face.
No cat faces,
Yeah.
but.
Cat face
The
filter.
judge, was it? The attorney and the judge? Yeah.
Attorney and the judge had a cat face?
Wasn't that a cat?
He couldn't turn off his filter, and so for the whole hearing, he was a cat face. It's pretty hilarious.
That's too bad.
All right, item 10, city clerk report.
Sam took my thunder.
Oh, I'm
The senior
sorry.
clerk
Good
report.
job, Sam.
I'm
Oh,
sorry.
no, I'm
But I
joking.
gave you credit.
I know, no, that was it.
No.
I just came to.
Thank you for
cheer.
doing that. That was pretty amazing.
And thanks to Liz as well,
Yes.
who helped with
Yes.
this.
Oh, that's
I
right.
did walk
Very
with her as well.
much so.
It was the last minute.
Yeah, I walked with her
Yes.
on.
She
Oh,
did
she
a
did
great
the
job
Friday.
of
She
the
did that on
decorations.
Friday,
I
and then she
didn't
walked
It was
mention.
the
on
last
Monday,
minute
so-
thing, and she
Yeah.
came through, so.
Awesome.
Very nice. It was really cool.
Okay, it's a 3-hour meeting, and we're going to move into closed session, so thank you for coming.
That was good to tell us.